Chapter 791 Disappear Quietly. Chapter 791 Disappear Quietly. If a warrior doesn't go out and enjoy the subtle mysteries of the extreme purgatory field to understand natural powers better every day, even if he has a bad innate endowment, accumulating for years can help with their understanding of powers and realms. This forbidden land was a magical area that could help warriors progress their realm. Staying in this area, a man's perception of realms and powers becomes clearer and stronger. Such an enticement was big enough. Shi Yan was touched. His mind was in a flutter. However, while he was still dismayed, Zhang Ji's fantasy Upanishad suddenly appeared. Jiang Gu had been waiting for this chance for a long time. Seeing Shi Yan's confused eyes, he seized the moment and attacked. He activated the 1,000 fantasy domain. Jiang Gu looked at him. Magical light shot out from his eyes. A gleam of confusion crossed Shi Yan's face. He couldn't differentiate illusions from reality. Jiang Ji's figures multiplied in his vision. Layers of water like barriers suddenly disappeared. A beautiful figure appeared in his retinue. It's Xia Xian Yan. More people appeared unceasingly. Shi Jian, Yang Tian Emperor, Yang Mu, Yi Tian Mo. They all came, smiling as if they wanted to tell him something. Shi Yan was baffled. He felt betrayed. His god's soul was tempted. He didn't realize that he was walking towards that group of people. Crack! His body immediately bumped into those layers of water ripples. He seemed to be bound and couldn't even wriggle. Shi Yan's face changed dramatically. At this moment, Shi Yan found that he was standing next to a towering pillar under the palace. Layers of barriers tied him. His god's soul was restrained. Chaotic energies gathered. The magical barriers revived and started to affect him. Jiang Gu suddenly smiled. Shi Yan, you're still a tender sprout. I'm too familiar with this place. Should I be so kind to bring you here? Bound with so many layers, Shi Yan was enraged, but he had no solution. The barriers were subtle and magical that acted like countless ropes tightening around his body. He couldn't wiggle out of them. He kept thinking of ways to escape as Shi Yan contacted the skybreaking shuttle. How can I get rid of it? Your power is insufficient. What? The barriers in this place are all strong and marvelous. Even if I take all of your energy, I can't break them. Unless you know the method or reach the peak of King God realm, you won't be able to do it. I don't know the realm of the person who built the barriers, but the wonderful features of this place are beyond my imagination. My maker was just a sacred grade blacksmith. His realm wasn't enough to make me a higher grade treasure, so... Shi Yan grimaced. This is the first time the skybreaking shuttle failed him completely. He thought there was no barrier that the skybreaking shuttle couldn't break in this world. But today he found that he was wrong. He had underestimated the might of the dark firmament, divine nation's imperial master. You shouldn't be outraged. In fact, I don't have any bad intentions. If you can break the mysteries of the barriers while you are in here, not only can you escape, but you will be able to get in the palace. Then you will know the secret that I couldn't figure out even after spending more than 200 years here. Jiang Gu beamed a faint smile. The cube stone in his hand glistened. A tender beam of light like a feather fell on Shi Yan's waist and took his purgatory token. Haha, I tell you this. I have no grudges against Ao Guduo. He did put me in this damn place, but it was because I wanted to get here. My purpose was to enter the extreme purgatory field. Shi Yan could only stare at the man taking his purgatory token away. He had no solutions, and he just remained silent, his eyes cold and dark. Jiang Ji's face darkened and became sinister. That year, I was at only the Sky Realm. My whole family was massacred. My wife was raped in front of me. I must survive to take revenge. But my archenemy was too strong. I wasn't his match. Living was hard for me at that time, too. Although the Raging Flame Star area is vast, I can't find enough shelter. But the extreme purgatory field was just the place that I needed. My hands are soaked in blood. I've killed many to make Ao Guduo jail me in the extreme purgatory field. Staying here, I can avoid my enemy's pursuit. Also, I can have a better place to cultivate and increase my realm. That is why I've stayed idle here for 250 years. From the Sky Realm, I've reached the third sky of King God Realm. I've sacrificed a lot for my revenge. His face distorted savagely while talking. Finally, today I gain the force for my revenge. Since you have only the first sky of King God Realm cultivation base and Aogera is at the second sky of King God Realm, I don't see how you will have a chance to kill him if he also has help from others. I don't want to make this bet, either. If I can have the purgatory token from you, why would I take a risk? Jiang Gu gradually pulled himself together. You don't need to hate me. I still think this is just an exchange between us. I told you the secrets that I kept for years. If you can break the barriers and get into the palace, perhaps you will have the luck that I can't imagine. If I didn't want to leave so badly, I wouldn't do this to you. I would stay here like the other four until I found the secrets of this place. I'm now giving this honor to you. You should thank me. You're still young. You still have time to play. I'm so sorry I can't stay here with you. Enjoy. I need to get out of here. Jiang Gu rubbed his chin. After another year, the extreme purgatory field's training will end. I will leave first. If we meet again, I will make up for your loss today. And yeah, I have to remind you that the other four aren't easy to talk to like I am. If you meet them, you have to be careful. They are the true villains of the Raging Flame Star area. They're very patient and are all at the third sky of King God Realm. After so many years studying this place, the five of us have found that if one of the five palaces is broken, the others would change accordingly. Solve this mystery yourself. After Jiang finished, he laughed evilly before leaving. He passed by the small cottage, roasted some fish, ate them, then picked some stuff. He left with satisfaction. After 1 hour, Jiang Gu appeared from the forbidden place. Yalin and Tai Mu were waiting outside. Seeing him, they were startled. They immediately got on guard, preparing for Jiang Ji's sudden attack. Jiang Gu looked at them, who looked like they were encountering the archenemy. He laughed. Don't be so tense. I won't risk my life fighting you. I got what I want. He shook Shi Yan's purgatory token. Tai Mu was shaken, shouting, Where's Shi Yan? Dead, of course. Jiang Gu laughed louder. He didn't treasure his life. He shouldn't have broken into the prohibited area. The barriers there had torn him into pieces. I didn't need to move my finger to receive this piece of purgatory token. So wonderful, right? Tai Mu and Yalin grimaced listening to him. They tensed up. I told you, I just need a purgatory token. If you don't want to get into more trouble, don't act rashly. Jiang Gu didn't bother with Tai Mu and Yalin. He left quietly and hurriedly as if he had something to finish. Yalin and Tai Mu looked helplessly at the man leaving. They didn't dare act recklessly. Jiang Gu had the third sky of King God Realm cultivation base, and his 1,000 fantasy domain had affected them directly. Yalin and Tai Mu understood that without Shi Yan, they wouldn't be able to fight the old man. The two contemplated for a while, their eyes gazing at the forbidden area. After a while they sighed. Too bad. Shi Yan was quite the character. I have never seen anyone that excellent at the first sky of King God Realm. If he survived, he would have been the most dazzling star of the divine nation, Yalin said with emotions. Tai Mu nodded heavily. He was too reckless. He didn't listen to us. If he didn't go inside there, that freaky old man wouldn't have done anything to him. If we went together, that man wouldn't have been able to attack us. Sigh. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Forget it. He chose his path. We had no choice. Yalin shook her head with regret. We should go. We still have a mission to finish. We should accomplish our task before saying more. Tai Mu agreed. He glared at the prohibited land for the last time before leaving. They didn't know that Shi Yan was still alive inside. After Jiangge left Yalin and Tai Mu, he wandered aimlessly, leaving no shadow. Aogu Duo and the others outside couldn't see him. His cube stone had concealed him from the purgatory token sensing, and the people using the lake to watch what was happening inside the extreme purgatory field. Jiangge moved discreetly in the extreme purgatory field. He visited 4 other places, the 4 forbidden lands. He and the other 4 had made an appointment. He told the others that he couldn't stay here any longer and that he must leave. A boy had replaced him. He would finish what Jiangge couldn't. Moving between the 4 forbidden lands took him half a year. Participants in the extreme purgatory field were still killing and chasing prisoners and bloodthirsty villains. No one had met Shi Yan. Aogu Duo, Leona, Du Tianji, and Ziyao in the dark firmament star couldn't use the magical mirror created by the former imperial master to spot Shi Yan in the extreme purgatory field. That forbidden land was able to avoid all kinds of sensing abilities. Everyone thought Shi Yan was dead. Time flies fast. Soon the training in the extreme purgatory field had come to an end. The term of 3 years was about to end. Ao Gara didn't see Shi Yan. The battle that everyone had been waiting for didn't take place. When the magical effects of the extreme purgatory field vanished, Du Tianlu and the 5 great feudal vassals cooperated in checking the battlefields. The lucky prisoners and villains who survived were jailed again. Du Tianlu faced the sky and shouted to call for the participants. Gradually they came one by one, but Shi Yan had never shown up. Leona waited in silence. Her face gradually darkened. Chapter 792. Calm down and break the barriers. Chapter 792. Calm down and break the barriers. Ao Gara, Demang Yalin, and Taimu gathered as Du Tianlu were calling for them. Shi Yan hadn't come up yet. Leona continued to grimace. After a while, almost all the participants gathered, but Shi Yan was still not present. Aogu Duo suddenly smiled. Leona, will you uphold our bet? Rochester, Carthew, and Delay also peeked at Leona with strange looks. Rochester and Delay seemed to take pleasure in her misfortune. Sigh, I thought that Shi Yan would win. I didn't expect that he would die in there. Big mistake. I wanted to wait until he got out of there and flatter the new star of the divine nation. This is so unfortunate. Rochester shook his head in disappointment and regret. If Shi Yan is dead, someone else should have the purgatory token. Leona snorted, glaring at Aogu Duo, who was content with his triumph. If he dies, I'll give you a life star, of course. Good. Aogu Duo laughed. While they were talking, Du Tianji in the faraway dark firmament pondered for a while and then said, Let's go. Zi Yao's face was gloomy. Grief sparkled in her beautiful eyes. She got up quietly. Du Tianji touched the bright mirror in front of them. Divine light radiated gloriously. A slit appeared at the center of the mirror. The king and Zi Yao disappeared into the slit. In the place where they could see the lake of the extreme purgatory field, Du Tianji and Zi Yao reappeared. After he identified which way to go, Du Tianji brought Xiao through several thousand miles and showed up at the place where the 5 feudal vassals gathering with just a single thought. Your Majesty, including Du Tianlu, the 5 feudal vassals kneeled down on one knee, greeting him with respect. The contestants, including Ao Gara, kneeled down on both knees, bending their heads over to show their humble admiration and respect to the king. Get up! Du Tianji nodded, his bearings calm and natural. Who is the winner? Lika! Du Tianlu pointed at the first female warrior under Leona's commands. She killed the most. Du Tianji smiled. Our divine nation's luck. A fantasy sky ring flew out from his finger toward Lika. 5 creators divine pellets for you to use when you break through to the original God realm. It has the best efficacy that will give you endless torrential soul energy. A suit of level 4 divine grade armor. It can fuse perfectly with your god body to increase your fighting abilities. Lika was thrilled, and she received the fantasy sky ring. She kept saying thanks. Thank you for your grace, your majesty. I will dedicate my life to the divine nation until I die. You don't need to give thanks. You've earned them. Du Tianji smiled. His line of sight shifted to Du Tianlu. We'll seal the extreme purgatory field shortly. The training in the extreme purgatory field ends now. We're still missing one person, answered Du Tianlu. He's here. Du Tianji turned around, looking behind them. Get out. You got the purgatory token, so you are exempt from all charges. From now on, you can go anywhere you want in this vast space. You're free. Leona and Ao Guduo all turned around to look. Jianggu showed himself, his face calm. He kneeled down. Thank you for your grace, your majesty. You killed Shiryan. Zi Yao shouted in a hoarse voice, her face ferocious. Cold light sparkled in her beautiful eyes, which could scare people. Leona also snorted. Her dark green eyes were like those of a serpent. She also made people tremble. Jianggu discolored. Not me. I didn't kill him. He entered a forbidden area, and the energy there tore him into pieces. I just picked up his purgatory token. Forbidden land? Du Tianji frowned, but he didn't chase further. He waved his hand, not waiting for Leona or Zi Yao to ask the man more questions. Hand back the purgatory token and leave now. From now, you are free from your prior crimes. Jianggu didn't say anything else. He left the purgatory token on the ground, thanked Du Tianji before soaring up into the sky. As though he was afraid of the other's words, he disappeared instantly. Leona and Zi Yao gazed at him with hatred and resentment. Ao Gera smiled brightly, walking towards Zi Yao. He bent his body. Your Highness, are you all right? Zi Yao looked at the smiling face of Ao Gera, whose look never changed. She didn't know why she felt so irritated. Anyway, Ao Gera was her subordinate, and he had been following her for years. He had given up everything for her. She had no reason to trouble him. She nodded and said, I'm okay. Shiryan saved me. I just don't feel well when he faced such an unexpected ending. Shiryan had joined hands with bloody slaughter Katua to kill you, your highness. He didn't deserve your worries. Ao Gera said seriously. Zi Yao's face got colder. I don't care what the others said. He saved me in the solar star exploding fragment field. There might have been something between him and Katua, but he was never his partner. She said resolutely. If you say this is true, then it is true. I believe you, your highness. The smile on Ao Gera was forced. He was astounded for a while. In his eyes, Shiryan was dead. There was no need to push it further. Leona, when will you pay for our bet? Ao Guduo smiled. He felt so good. After we leave the Purgatory Star, you send your men to my territory. I will hand you a life star. Leona's face grimaced. She snorted with icy, cold eyes. Everything is over. Do what you need to do. You don't need to stay in Purgatory Star anymore. Du Tianji advised faintly before nodding to Leona. Come to Dark Firmament Star with me. I have something to discuss with you. Yes, nodded Leona. You and Ao Gera return to Glorious Amethyst Star and prepare. You'll depart to the 9-star Chamber of Commerce, soon to meet Old Fan and carry the task I've given you. Du Tianji looked at Zi Yao. Zi Yao nodded quietly. She felt a little bit lost. Father, I want to stay in Purgatory Star for a few days before I go. Okay, as long as you understand it. Although Shiryan was your excellent subordinate, he is dead. Don't dwell on it for too long. The divine nation has many important matters now. Don't get distracted for too long. Du Tianji arranged things and then nodded to Leona. They left through the lake to return to dark Firmament Star. Shortly after, the 4 feudal vassals Ao Guduo, Rochester, Carthu, and Alay adjusted their delegations and departed. They seemed to have a more important business, so they didn't linger here. Du Tianlu sealed all the gates of the extreme purgatory field. He also strengthened the prisons of the extreme purgatory field to ensure nothing unexpected would happen. Then he left. Zi Yao stayed in the purgatory star for 7 days. She checked all the exits of the extreme purgatory field as if she was waiting for someone or something. She didn't let Ao Gara come with her. She wandered around the extreme purgatory field alone. During the 7 days, she didn't find anything. Her face became darker, and her mood got gloomier day after day. No miracle happened. After 7 days, Ziyao left with grief and bitterness. She departed from the purgatory star begrudgingly. She didn't know that one of the seal exits she had passed by was very close to where Shi Yan was blocked. It was so close to Shi Yan that she just needed to dash for a bit to see him. However, the Forbidden Land had blocked all of sensing for living beings inside. She couldn't sense Shi Yan's living energy. Eventually, she had to leave the purgatory star with deep regret. Time flew quickly. The purgatory star resumed its calmness. Experts all left. The extreme purgatory field was sealed. This land returned to be a quiet place. 94 out of 99 prohibited areas had disappeared. The 5 forbidden lands with magical effects still existed. Shi Yan stayed in the deepest place of his valley, inching through layers of barriers with great efforts. That grand palace hid in the deepest place of the forbidden land under the shade of a tall mountain. Thick clouds concealed it. No one could see anything through that layer of clouds. He came closer to a towering, massive pillar. 2 years had passed. During 2 years, he was always trying to decipher the subtle mysteries of the barriers. There were 49 layers of barrier covering the palace. At this point in time, he had broken 20 layers. Each layer was a magnificent formation, which hid the great mysteries of earth and heaven. The reason why Jiang couldn't break those barriers through his 250 years staying here was that he wasn't a blacksmith, which had limited his abilities. With his king-god realm cultivation base, he had to use the soul consciousness to discover that subtle formation. Of course, his progress was too slow. Shi Yan was different. He had a natural advantage. He had the experience of studying magical formations in the blacksmith's secrets of success. He had gained an unimaginable amount of experience and wealth. A layer of barrier consisted of many smaller formations. Although it was magically complex, a divine-grade blacksmith with wholehearted dedication could still break it. Even if it wasn't fast, he could still make progress. If Jianggu had known that Shi Yan at the King God realm had such tremendous forces, and that he was also a divine-grade blacksmith, he wouldn't have used those barriers to bind him. After deciphering each layer, his understanding of blacksmithing would reach a new height. The formations that built the barriers all hid the magical truth of nature. During this time, his realm was refined and strengthened, and his soul was sublimated. His sensing of natural powers became much more sensitive in this place. While he focused on breaking the barriers, the benefits it brought to his realm was hard to estimate. Whenever a layer was broken, his realm would be refined one level. This also benefited his soul altar. While Shi Yan didn't notice it, his 3 powers Upanishad had a subtle change when he attempted to comprehend the mysteries of earth and energy inside those barriers. He had forgotten Jiang Ji's trap. Now he had just sunk into his work of deciphering barriers, which were one of the most magical journeys of his martial path. His mind changed as he had developed advantages. His work speed accelerated. Today he had broken through the 42nd layer out of 49 layers. He suddenly felt a marvelous commotion from inside the palace. At the same time, the other 4/3 sky of King God realm warriors in the other 4 forbidden areas of the extreme purgatory field, who were doing the same thing with him, all witnessed a strange occurrence. They were all shaken. Chapter 793. Meet Up in Precincts. Chapter 793. Meet Up in Precincts. After Jiang Ge left the Purgatory Star, he dashed furiously in the general direction of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. He didn't have a war chariot or a battleship, so he flew by himself at the fastest possible speed that a 3rd sky of King God realm warrior could travel at. After 3 months, he flew past the star area near the dark firmament star. Every time he exhausted his energy, Jiang Ge would find a place to rest and use the divine crystals to recovery. Then he would continue moving. Today, when he consumed a lot of his energy, he found an abandoned mineral star. That mineral star was almost empty. It had caves of various sizes. From a distance, it looked like a giant hornet hive. Its energy was exhausted a long time ago. No pieces of or remained. Jiang Ge beamed a faint smile. His body descended like a shadow on the mineral star. 10 medium-quality, divine crystals flew out from his fantasy sky ring. As he sat down to absorb the crystals, he discolored in fright. The darkness covered him like a dome of the sky. There wasn't a beam of light in that darkness. He couldn't even see his own fingers. It was like a prison that made his soul decay. Jiang Ge was shaken. He was frightened, looking here and there, but he couldn't see anything. His heart sank to the bottom of an abyss. He was astounded, and it took him a while for him to react. He kneeled down anxiously and said with respect, "Greetings, Madame Leona." The Raging Flame Star Arena had so many powers Upanishad, and some of them were so famous that everyone knew. The Absolute Dark Upanishad was the flagship of the leader of the 5 feudal vassals, Leona. No one else possessed this power. As the endless darkness engulfed Jiang Ge, he was initially bewildered, but then he immediately knew whom he was encountering. The Bloody Butcher of the Divine Nation, commander of the Bloody Legion, head of the 5 brutal devils, Madame Leona. Jiang Ge had no intention of resisting. He kneeled down on one knee and slightly stooped his head. "I wonder why Madame Leona has humbled her good self to visit this place. What are my orders?" A faint light was revealed silently. A woman looked as sinister and cold as ghosts that sat on the stone ground by a cave that ran deep into the ground. She squinted and said calmly, "You have 2 options." Jiang Ge stooped lower with a serious face. "I am listening." 1. I will kill you, destroy your soul altar, and detain your god soul. Then, I will use my secret techniques to take your memories. Leona's voice was indifferent, as if she was talking about something that had no relation to her. "I wish to know the other option." Jiang Ge was in fear, his voice even trembling. "Madame Leona, I want to live. Please give me a chance. Tell me all things you saw in the forbidden place related to Shi Yan in details. Of course, you can choose to lie if you think you can deceive me." Leona was nonchalant, as though she didn't care about his killing him. She didn't show her intention of killing him. Her calmness scared her victims out of their wits. Jiang Ge lifted his head up and his body shivered. He didn't hesitate and answered immediately. "He is not dead. He's constrained in the forbidden place by the barriers. I took the purgatory token from him, but I didn't harm him. There's a palace inside that forbidden place which has 49 layers of barriers. It should be built by the former imperial masters of the divine nation to conceal an unknowable secret, perhaps." He knew he had only one chance in front of Leona. If he lied, this infamous woman would never give him a bit of her mercy. Thus, Jiang Ge didn't have the nerves to lie. He didn't even dare pause in his narration, as he was afraid that she would think that he was taking time to fabricate his story. Leona listened to him silently without interrupting him. Until Jiang Ge finished, she remained in thought. Jiang Ge slightly lifted his head up looking at her anxiously. He didn't dare make a small move, just waiting for Leona's final decision. He understood how brutal and cruel this woman was. All stories about this woman were related to bloody massacres. He knew her realm, which was enough to erase him easily. No one would ever know he was buried or torn into pieces on this damned planet. Thus, he didn't dare move or talk rashly. He just waited like that. You can go. After a while, Leona waved to dismiss him as though she was waving a flyaway. Remember, I've never seen you and you've never seen me here. I will remember your kindness for the rest of my life. Jiang threw his hand into the air and swore. He watched her, seeing her have no other commotions. He fearfully backed off little by little. As soon as he got out of Leona's dark domain, he ran like crazy and didn't dare stop, even just for a second. Leona stood up in the dark. Her dark green eyes shot toward the direction of the purgatory star for a long time. Then she snorted. That little brat made me lose a life star. I'll remember this debt. The absolute darkness drifted like a dark cloud into the immense starry area. It flashed, swayed, then went invisible. The emptied mineral star resumed its quietness. The prohibited area, sealed extreme, purgatory field, purgatory star. Sher Yen was staying in the middle of rippling, water-like barriers, gawking at the grand palace that was almost within his reach. A magical energy, fluctuation, sent out from a deep place inside that palace. Just like the change of seasons, the palace seemed to continue operating now. Strange and grumbling explosions echoed from the ground under the forbidden land where he was suspended in the air. The same changes also happened in the other forbidden areas. 4 third sky of King God realm warriors were also confined in the barriers like Sher Yen. They lifted their heads, looking at the palace and feeling the energy waves sending out from inside. The 5 forbidden areas in the extreme purgatory field slowly moved and adjoined with each other in a way no one could ever imagine or have a chance to witness. Although they looked slow, they were actually moving very fast. Within 15 minutes, the 5 forbidden areas situated in 5 different regions of the extreme purgatory field had magically fused into one intact piece. Even the 5 wonderful palaces appeared as one place under some mysterious force. Immediately, Sher Yen saw not only 1 but 5 palaces. The 5 palaces looked like 5 radiantly dazzling, massive pieces of a jewel. With the support of the towering stone pillar, they moved up to the sky over their heads. The 5 grand palaces arrayed a pentagon in the air. Like Sher Yen, the other 4 were staying near their palaces and facing the sky with a look of astonishment. The other 4 didn't have Sher Yan's progress. After so many years, they had only broken through 23 layers. Sher Yen was more productive. The surprised voices of the 4 arose from 4 different corners. They all gazed at Sher Yen. Sher Yen stayed in his barriers and tilted his head, looking at the other 4. A gleam of surprise sparkled in his eyes. The 4 of them were at the 3rd sky of King God realm, 3 males and 1 female. The 3 male warriors were all the old man with disheveled hair and dirty clothes. They looked like they hadn't cleaned their bodies for years. All of them looked helter-skelter, their eyes hiding brutal and malevolent intentions. The only woman looked in her 30s. She was beautiful, wearing a snakeskin-like leather robe at knee length, revealing her jade-like calves. That woman wasn't human. She belonged to the Ghostmark clan. Delicate cyan tattoos were shown on her exposed white skin arms and legs, which gave her a perfectly beautiful look. Charming, but also evil. In her 30s, she was the flower at its most beautiful blooming time. Subtly, fine azure patterns were drawn on her delicate neck. She had 2 exquisite jade earrings dangling on her earlobes, which created the ding-dang sounds when she moved. Her beautiful eyes were like a deep sea that people could never measure. She eyed Sher Yen from a far distance with a beam in her eyes that signaled how she felt uneasy. Her eyebrows arched as she gave an inaudible snort. When the other four were watching him, Shi Yan also observed them. Not long afterward, he looked sterner. Just like Jiang Ge, they were all at the third sky of King God Realm. They were the death-sentenced inmates of the extreme purgatory field. Their hands were soaked in blood. They were not good people. Kid, are you the person Jiang Ge mentioned? You've replaced him. An old man as thin as a bamboo stick that looked like a skeleton with human skin cover asked. His eyes sparkled with gloomy light. Seems like you are much faster than us. What did you do to combine all the forbidden places into one piece? The other three observed him, their eyes hiding their ferocious thoughts. Yeah, Jiang Ge trapped me, making me sink in here. Shi Yan frowned before continuing. He left, I guess. Since then, I've been breaking these barriers. Until now, I've deactivated 42 barriers. At the moment the last barrier was broken, the palace I saw suddenly changed, which brought us all here. Yeah, I think it's the special effect of the Forbidden Lands. This wasn't my intention. Feng Rao, what do you think? The man who talked to him first pondered before turning to look at the woman who had strange and exquisite drawings on her body. The other two old men also looked at the ghost-marked clan woman named Feng Rao. It seemed like she was their leader. Of course, this is good. Feng Rao cracked a strange smile. Light sparkled from her eyes. We four have spent a lot of time just to break around 20 layers. Jiang Ge was the worst. He had been holding us back. He left and arranged a good boy who could surpass us in just a short time. Aren't we lucky? Then the other three acted oddly. Those old men didn't look like good people. They burst out laughing bizarrely as if they all agreed with her. We've been patient for a long time just to find what was inside the palaces. This kid accelerated our progress. It is all good for us. Feng Rao smiled. Didn't you see that the barriers are loosening a bit? Of course, we did. The three old men cracked strange smiles. Shi Yan's face darkened as he had a bad premonition. These four people were too relaxed and nonchalant. If their desire of knowing the secrets of this place was too much, they must have planned something. Chapter 794. A Dark Enchantment. Chapter 794. A Dark Enchantment. These four seemed to be different from Jiang Ge, although Jiang Ge was curious to know the secrets of the palace. He was too far from the level of the other four. He wouldn't let those secrets keep him here like the others who would never leave until they reached the palaces. Good, very good. With this kid, our progress will be much faster. The skinny man bared his teeth, smiling disgustingly. Then it's all right. Our purpose is to understand the secrets of those palaces. I heard they were built by the 5 former imperial masters of the dark firmament divine nation. They hide an earth-shaking secret. I haven't gotten out of this place because of it. Feng Rao glared at the other three. You guys are curious too, perhaps. The 3 old men nodded simultaneously. Kid, what's your name? Asked Feng Rao. Shi Yan. Okay, Shi Yan. Since Jiang Ge transferred his responsibility to you, you shall replace him then. Not bad. Just do what you were doing. Break the rest of the barriers. Feng Rao assigned him this task, naturally, as if it was obvious. Shi Yan frowned, contemplated for a while, and then laughed. He stopped moving inside the barrier. The 3 old men darkened their faces. Why did you laugh? Feng Rao's arched eyebrows rose. Her slender face outlined her bright eyes, which were sparkling with deep and strange light. Aren't you interested in it? Of course, I am. Shi Yan shook his head many times faintly. But I don't want to be dim-sighted. I want to know why you guys want to get in there. You guys aren't like Jiang Ge. Jiang Ge didn't know what was in the palaces. I think you guys know something. Yeah, maybe you weren't forced to be jailed in the extreme purgatory field, right? The other 4 frowned. I think you came to the extreme purgatory field on your own, with the goal to seek these forbidden areas. Am I right? Shi Yan smiled coldly. The other four quieted down. Feng Rao pondered for a while, then probed. Do you know something, too? Sure, Yen could feel something here, but he was still calm. Yeah, I'm like you guys. I came here for this special place. I let Jiang Gu trap me here. It was exactly what I wanted. What you know, I also know. Huh. I just want to confirm. Do you have the jade token? It wasn't easy to deceive Feng Rao. She snorted. Each of the 5 of us has a jade token? Jiang Gu kept one. If you don't have the jade token, how did you know it? I don't have the jade token, Shi Yan shook his head. But the one Jiang Gu had comes from my family. My family had kept it for a long time. After my family has declined, the jade token had been passed through many people before Jiang Gu got it. Jiang Gu has the jade token, but he didn't know the real secret of it. I'm here with the same goal as you guys. Sure, Yen had racked his brain to fabricate those lies. He thought it could work. Indeed, Feng Rao's group changed their facial expressions listening to him. They seemed to buy it. No wonder why Jiang Gu wasn't so patient. He doesn't know much. The bony old man had his eyes flared as he nodded discreetly. If we have the same goal, we don't have much time to talk. The secret of those palaces can change the structure of the raging flame star area. People, do your best. Feng Rao also nodded. Kid, our priority is to remove the barriers. Your fast speed helps loosen the barrier in our place too. If we continue this way, we can get in there soon. Wait until we break the barriers outside the palace. Then we will talk. The other 3 nodded. Shi Yan pondered for a while. He didn't continue to quarrel with them. He got the conclusion he wanted. Feng Rao's team came to the extreme purgatory field because of the forbidden lands. There was no doubt about it. Their imprisonment in the purgatory star was just their trick. Those 4 people were at the 3rd sky of King God Realm. They were all cruel and malignant. With their abilities, it wasn't too difficult to kill a participant to take the ticket outside. They lingered here for something. A secret that could restructure the raging flame star area. Shi Yan was interested in it all of a sudden. He focused on breaking the left 7 layers. After breaking 1 layer, he would take a rest and talk with the other 4. Through some conversations, he knew that Feng Rao came from the land of God Punishment, the most chaotic place of the entire raging flame star area. Her status wasn't ordinary. The skeleton-like old man was called Ganji, was a warrior of the 9 Star Chamber of Commerce. The other 2 were named Pang Jia and Han Di. They were from the Underworld League. None of them came from the Dark Firmament Divine Nation, which surprised him. With the same goal, the atmosphere between them seemed to be harmonious without any dispute while the barriers were not yet lifted. As Shi Yan had progressed fast, the breaking speed of the other 4 became faster accordingly. Soon, there was only 1 barrier in front of Shi Yan. At this moment, Feng Rao said, "We can take a rest." Shi Yan stayed in the water-like barrier and stopped his work. He floated in so many ripples, his face calm. Although he was surprised, he didn't outwardly express it. Wait until they reach the last layer. We will join hands and tear the barrier at the same time to enter the palace. Feng Rao looked at him. Some of the layers in our places still remain. If you break it now, something will change accordingly in our places. At that time, perhaps we can't open the 5 palaces at the same time, and we won't receive anything from it. Ganji, Pangjia, and Handi nodded. Sure, Yen didn't know what Feng Rao said was true or not. However, he wouldn't take risks as he didn't know what hid in those palaces. If he broke into there alone, he could possibly encounter something dangerous. Thus, Shi Yan stopped his work, bobbing in the water-like layer. He closed his eyes to comprehend what he had collected during this time of breaking barriers. Shi Yan was studying the subtle mysteries of magical formations that made these barriers. Every magical formation contained different truths of nature. The way to decipher the formation was to follow the trace of its energy, using his knowledge of formation and barriers and the soul consciousness to solve it. During this process, Shi Yan gained a deeper perception of other powers in the world. Although he didn't aim to dig his 3 powers Upanishad further, he still got something naturally. Shi Yan stayed quiet and took out the divine crystals to restore his energy. He calmed down his mind to learn the specialties of his powers and didn't bother with the other 3, who were still struggling, breaking their barriers. Time flew fast. A long time had passed. Today, Feng Rao was the first one who had reached the final layer. She exhaled and glared at Shi Yan, who was meditating. She didn't say anything, but took out the divine crystals to restore her power. A long time afterward, the other 3 also reached the final layer. Their faces brightened up as they were very excited. Just like Shi Yan and Feng Rao, the other 3 didn't hasten to break the final layer. They quietly used the divine crystals to recover their powers to the peak. Shi Yan had restored his powers. He observed them discreetly. His face gradually darkened. He saw their cautiousness. It was obvious that they were so excited, but they all controlled and recovered their powers to the peak. Their intentions were clear to Shi Yan. They all knew they had to use all of the forces in the next moment. Perhaps, after they had broken the final layer, the harmonious relationship between them would be demolished forever without any chance to cooperate again. He understood that once all the barriers were broken, entering the palaces would trigger the big fight against these people. Since he had only the first sky of King God Realm cultivation base, among the 5 of them he was the weakest. Shi Yan knitted his brows tightly. Although Ganji, Pangjia, and Handi are all at the 3rd sky of King God Realm, Handi's the weakest. His time in the King God Realm wasn't for too long. Suddenly, a wisp of soul consciousness that was hard to detect sneaked through the broken layers to Shi Yan from Feng Rao's. The eccentric, ghost-marked clanwoman stooped and opened her eyes to look at him. At this moment, Ganji, Pangjia, and Handi were still restoring their power. They seemed not to recognize Feng Rao's move. You shouldn't reply with soul consciousness. Your realm's low. If you release your soul energy, they can sense you immediately. Feng Rao's thought continued to reach him. You just need to listen to me. At the moment the barriers shatter altogether when we enter the palace, we will have an unavoidable battle. Since your realm's the lowest, I don't know how you got in there, but when we engage in a battle, you will inevitably die first. I have a suggestion. Once we get in there, the other 3 will launch attacks immediately. We will join hands. You'll help me to hold Handi back for a while. You don't need to join the battle. Just stay outside. You shouldn't hurry because of the things in the palace. Even though Handi's the weakest among us, he is not someone you can deal with easily. When I say hold him back, deal with him with a tool which you can pour your energy into that I will give you. You don't need to bother with Ganji and Pangjia. If I win something, I won't forget your part. If you agree, you should give me a slight nod. Shi Yan squinted, observing her for a long time. Then he slightly nodded. Feng Rao parted her lips, forming a smile. Her eyes glistened. Next, she told him how to use the tool. Among these 4 people, Feng Rao seemed to have the most exquisite cultivation base. Her understanding of powers Upanishad was the most profound. That's why she didn't worry that the other 3 could hear her soul thoughts sending to Shi Yan. Phew! Genji exhaled foul air. The divine crystal in his hand turned into dust and scattered. The old man now looked refreshed and sound. He glared at Feng Rao next to him. Suddenly he stooped and smiled, his smile worth studying. He looked at Feng Rao, then sneaked at Shi Yan. A gleam of disdain flashed in his eyes. Apparently, he didn't consider Shi Yan his equal opponent. Shortly, Pangjia and Handi woke up. When they looked at Feng Rao, they seemed to be afraid of her. However, when they shifted their looks to Shi Yan, their fear disappeared. Obviously, just like Ganji, they deemed Shi Yan nothing of a threat. "Let's go!" Feng Rao shouted. Shi Yan stooped, placing his hands on the ultimate layer of the barrier. The other four also worked on their last barrier breaking. Chapter 795. Small Character, Big Effect. Chapter 795. Small Character, Big Effect. Shi Yan extended his hands, touching the barrier which had a wooden texture. Those magical wood textures connected each other. They were green-brown that looked more like a thick forest. An aura of florist diffused from this barrier. Closing his eyes, Shi Yan felt like he was walking deep into a luxurious forest. He could even smell the fresh smell of green trees and grass. He could feel the breath of nature. Countless wooden pieces fused with each other, creating a sea of lush plants. The essence qi of wood permeated everywhere, thickly and vigorously. At the same time, the other four placed their hands on the barrier. From Feng Rao's direction, gold light emitted while red flame, white steam, and yellow earth qi gushed out from Ganji, Pangjia, and Handi's areas respectively. 5 elements forces. At first glance, Shi Yan understood that this ultimate layer hid the mysteries of 5 elements. They seemed to connect with each other, too. The barriers of 5 elements, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, could always fuse with each other magically. These last barriers interlinked between the palaces. They kept the subtle powers of balanced 5 elements. Once they broke this balance, something beyond their imagination would happen. Shi Yan observed the wood texture for a while, but he didn't hasten. He closed his eyes and quieted his mind to feel the magical vitality of the wood texture. Shortly a thought arose in his head. His mind flickered. The dead Upanishad was activated. The soul burial ground diffused, expanding next to him. It engulfed the luxurious forest created by those wood pieces. Wood energy emitted from those magical wood textures, under the effects of the soul burial ground. This wood energy was absorbed gradually. The vigorous vitality was collected and gathered by Shi Yan. His god body suddenly received the lively power which boosted his power. The subtle power of 5 elements turned into beams of pure energy entering his flesh and bones. This last barrier of wood power was dissolved easily under his special power, Upanishad. At this speed, this last barrier would soon vanish. However, Feng Rao's group of 4 found themselves struggling. While they were breaking the barriers, their faces were grim. Sweat beaded their foreheads. They were focusing wholeheartedly, not daring to be distracted. The power in their god bodies was draining fast. Shi Yan could solve his barrier easily, but it was troublesome for them. They were urging their energy madly. Light sparkled from time to time from their bodies as they poured energy into the barriers. They closed their eyes to sense the leaks of the barriers which they would fill with their energy. Those people didn't cultivate any power of the 5 elements. Sure, Yin couldn't guess it before they had released their god domain. However, he understood that their powers were almighty and ruthless. As long as they were persistent, when they wore out the energy of the barrier, they would finish it. While he was observing Feng Rao's group, his marvelous soul burial ground had absorbed almost all the wood energy of the last barrier. Seeing the last layer was about to be broken, Shi Yan suddenly stopped his activity. His god domain disappeared. He relaxed and watched the other 4. Sure, Yan didn't hasten to tear the last layer of barriers. He didn't know what was in the 5 places or the dangers hiding in there. Thus, he didn't want to be the first one jump in there. As Feng Rao had reminded him, he stayed outside to see what would happen before he could decide his next moves. Shortly, Feng Rao's group had worn out the energy of the final barriers and broken them. Crack, crack. Clear echoes arose from the other 4's areas. Light dots of 4 colors scattered, for shadows dashed like meteors under beams of red light. They stormed towards the 5 palaces. Ganji was the fastest. He just swayed and appeared in a palace. Pang Jia and Han Di followed him closely. Feng Rao, the one people feared a lot, came last, while the other 3 dashed into the palace. Feng Rao paused, glaring at Shi Yan. Abruptly, an azure ball covered in lightning was shot toward Shi Yan. Shi Yan was bewildered. He immediately tore off the last barrier. He urged essence chi on his palm and condensed them into fine beams like snakes. He caught the azure ball. This ball was small enough for him to hold it with one hand. However, it was much heavier than it looked. The ball was covered with some strange spikes. At first glance, it looked like a hedgehog curling its body with immense lightning on its spikes. After he had caught the ball, lightning power like ropes condensed and wound around his arm. Azure lightning strikes, and his essence, chi, fused. As Shi Yan's soul consciousness flickered, like Feng Rao had told him, he used a strange technique to connect with an area inside that ball. Shortly, he had formed a connection with that small ball. Now he could control the ball. Just like driving the amethyst war chariot, he could manipulate the ball easily. Lightning strikes mixed with his essence chi, which helped him control the lightning power. Feng Rao threw him this toy to deal with Han Di. According to Feng Rao, Shi Yan could use the lightning power in this thunderbolt ball to subdue Han Di. It could even disrupt Han Di's god domain. Holding the thunderbolt ball in his hand, Shi Yan didn't hasten to leave or bother fighting Ganji, Pang Jia, and Han Di, which was taking place in the palace, just looking at Feng Rao from a distance. Feng Rao nodded to him. She said nothing afterward. Her figure faded immediately. In the next moment, she appeared near Ganji, Pang Jia, and Han Di. As soon as she appeared, she instantly attacked Ganji. The god domain of these 4 emerged in one palace. At this moment, Shi Yan finally knew which powers Upanishad each of them cultivated. Ganji's power was gravity. In his affected area, blocks of stone that built up the palace were shaken as if they were about to collapse. In his divine gravitational field, the gravity was increased several hundred times. Besides him, no one could be free of this special effect. Pang Jia's power Upanishad could make his body stretch or contract at will. When he performed his god domain, his fingers could extend or shorten easily like a monster. His bones would be like the spiral spring that could be lengthened 10 times. This was one of the rarest power Upanishad that Shi Yan had ever seen. Han Di's power Upanishad was soul-dragging. Inside his god domain, shadows of ghosts and demons moved back and forth. He could control them all. Anyone entered Han Di's god domain would have his soul bound and be unable to control his body. Now Shi Yan knew why Feng Rao had given him the thunderbolt ball. Han Di's power could control ghosts and souls, which got scared witless from thunder and lightning. Thus, thunderbolts were the nemesis of his domain. The god domains of Ganji, Pang Jia, and Han Di were somehow odd. However, the oddest was Feng Rao's domain. Feng Rao's power Upanishad was sound. When her god domain was created, countless sadly grating and shrill voices reverberated. She shouted, and her essence chi was poured into her god domain, creating more sharp noises that sounded like brutal blades. When Pang Jia or Han Di shot their energies into her strange domain, under her techniques and spells, their powers would be locked or burst off. They couldn't damage her. Sure, Yan didn't know the real origin of those 4, but he was sure they have peculiar god domains. They were attacking each other in the palace as if they had seen a marvelous treasure in there. No one noticed Shi Yan. Perhaps in their minds, Shi Yan was just a small character with only the first sky of king god realm cultivation base. He wouldn't be able to affect and change the situation of their battle. They decided to ignore him. Feng Rao had used a strange sound technique to subdue the other 3. She shrilled. The ear-piercing voice and her energy became invisible spears crossing the space, aiming at Ganji, Pangjia, and Handi. Only Handi's peculiar power, Upanishad, could trouble her. Since Handi could use the magical power of Soul Upanishad, he could make countless ghosts and evils came forth to create shields from the sharp sound spears. He didn't struggle much. Sound has no weight. That's why Ganji's gravity power couldn't affect it. Those sound spears then wreaked havoc in his god domain. Ganji felt that his hands were tied. He couldn't do anything. Pangjia didn't have any solution. Even if he could make his hands longer when the sound attacked him, he had to shrink his limbs instantly, resizing his god body 10 times smaller. Sher Yen! All of a sudden, Feng Rao shouted while fighting 1-on-3. Sure, Yen got out of the barrier and walked to the palace. Hearing her call, he hesitated for a while before flinging the thunderbolt ball. Hundreds of azure lightning strikes moved like the electric eels toward Handi's god domain. His god domain felt each of blue lightning strike, and it burned many ghosts in there. Immense azure mist fumed. Handi's god domain was shattered under the coverage of the blue lightning. It couldn't perform at its best. Kid, you wish for death. Handi was enraged. As he hadn't prepared to counterattack, his god domain was disrupted. Feng Rao's maledictions had shot him badly. His god body now had many bleeding holes. He was outraged, looking at Sher Yen with a flame of anger in his eyes. His god domain was damaged, making Feng Rao's power fiercer. Ganji and Pangjia were completely subdued. They had no solution to wiggle. Feng Rao was excited. While dealing with the other two, she distracted them for a while and went quickly towards an area inside the palace. A rainbow-like bunch of light, like a ribbon, shot out from her soft palm that flew directly to that area. A fragment that looked like a turtle shell was shielded by a magical formation placed in that area. Feng Rao's rainbow was shot there, smashing the formation. The fragment that looked like a turtle shell was about to fall into her hand. Shortly, a tremor was sent from the 5 palaces. From the other formations in the other 4 palaces, pieces of turtle shell flew out and gathered as if they were about to join and create something complete and extraordinary. Chapter 796. Hiding Incompetence by Keeping Quiet. Chapter 796. Hiding Incompetence by Keeping Quiet. The 5 pieces of turtle shell used to be split up, but now they were reunited, becoming one intact piece under some force. By the time the 5 pieces of turtle shell combined, a magical energy, fluctuation, bloomed fiercely from that shell. Feng Rao discolored as if she could feel something terrible. She didn't say anything, but flew away in just a blink. Her figure swayed, and she had gone very far away from that turtle shell. Right at that moment, tens of thousands of 7-colored lights shot out from the shell, each of which was sharp enough to pierce through anything. The rays of light were denser near the turtle shell. They shot out everywhere and became more scattering. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Tens of thousands of rays shot out altogether. Handi wasn't so cautious. More than 10 beams of light pierced him. His god body revealed some spatial holes. Shortly after, Handi's god body was finished. Even his soul altar was pierced and exploded shortly. Ganji and Pangjia could notice the danger. They flew away after Feng Rao. However, they couldn't dodge all the rays. Some lights had managed to prick their arms and waist that looked like the wounds caused by invisible swords. They were lucky that those lights didn't hit their weak points. Unlike poor Handi, they were still alive. They hastened to use pellets to stop the wounds from bleeding and grow flesh to seal the holes. Their intestines stayed in their tummy. The unharmed were Feng Rao, who fled first, and Sher Yen, who was standing the furthest from the source of attacks. Sure, Yen was frightened since there was a scattering beam shot right next to him. Too close. If he hadn't listened to Feng Rao and went inside, he would have possibly gotten hit. The closer it was to the turtle shell, the thicker the beams of light were. They condensed and then expanded. The gaps between the beams enlarged when they shot out. Shi Yan and Feng Rao had swayed between those gaps to dodge the fatal attacks. Tens of thousands of light beams bombarded thickly from the turtle shell before ceasing. In just a blink, condensed light covered the turtle shell while it was spinning in the area of the clear energy formation. Ganji and Pangjia simply cured their wounds and gazed at Feng Rao with rage and hatred. Bitch! Well done! These two had moved to stay in the gaps between the light beams. They didn't get hurt, but they were pale. Apparently, they got hurt severely. You and I are the same. If you haven't hastened to attack me, we wouldn't have caused the reunion of the 5 pieces of the turtle shell. Everything wouldn't have turned this way. I can only say that you deserve it. Feng Rao beamed a faint smile, not showing that she was weaker. Well, if we haven't hindered you, would you have taken all the good things? Wouldn't that be ideal for you, eh? If you were a nice person, why wouldn't you spare some good things for us? Ganji was outraged. His eyes were cold and sinister as he was angry. Pangjia sneered, looking at Feng Rao before glaring at Shi Yan. Bitch, you're good at calculating. You decided to cooperate with that kid and made him hold back Han Di, which made his god domain ineffective. You're so cunning and malignant. Well, the 3 of you have soon planned to fake your first fight and wait until I got into your trap. You wanted to kill me, the strongest first. Did you think that I wouldn't know your scheme? Feng Rao arched her brows and snorted. You can plan to attack me, but I'm not allowed to counterattack. Sure, Yan was surprised listening to their conversation. He felt grim. None of them were nice. All had bad intentions. Ganji, Pangjia, and Han Di all knew that Feng Rao was the toughest to deal with. They had a perfect plan that they would pretend to fight against each other to entice Feng Rao. The 3 of them would join hands and kill Feng Rao first. Then they would check out the treasures of this place. Anyway, Feng Rao had predicted their scheme. She wasn't fooled, so she decided to join hands with Shi Yan to hold back Han Di, preventing him from utilizing his energy to the utmost. She was afraid of Han Di's power the most. Thus, the cunning plan of Ganji, Pangjia, and Han Di was ineffective. Feng Rao, in an opposite situation, had gained the upper hand and suppressed Ganji and Pangjia. She almost got the piece of turtle shell first. Unfortunately, man proposes, but God disposes. Even Feng Rao had a wrong calculation. The 5 pieces had reunited fast, leaving her no time to dodge the danger. Her plan failed. They're all old cunning foxes indeed. Shi Yan became more cautious. While they were talking, he silently swayed between the gaps of the light beams to the position nearest to Han Di's shattered body to absorb his thick essence chi. No one noticed this move of his. Han Di was at the 3rd sky of King God Realm. Even though he was dead, the energy he had accumulated for so many years wouldn't vanish so quickly. When Shi Yan came, the unowned essence chi beams seemed to find a new host. They discreetly congregated in his body. The whole life essence chi of a King God Realm warrior was massive. Shi Yan hated that Feng Rao, Ganji, and Pangjia couldn't quarrel longer so that he would have time to harvest this marvelous energy. The 5 pieces of turtle shell have united. You know what to do now. Ganji gritted his teeth, looking at Feng Rao indignantly. It was a good business, but you guys have messed everything up. And now no one will get anything from this. You blame me. Feng Rao made a cold expression. Why do you blame me? Didn't you want to kill me and steal the treasures? All of you are no good. No one has the right to blame the other. After that, Ganji and Pangjia quieted down. I have no idea what to do since the 5 pieces have united. All right, if you have any good solutions to get through those fatal beams to be close to the turtle shell, you can try. You can be sure that I won't attack you at this moment. Feng Rao pondered for a while. She was a little bit upset, though. She looked at the turtle shell while she wiped a flock of her long hair. Shi Yan was standing 50 meters away from Han Di's body, frowning and looking at that area. The 5 pieces of turtle shell were adjoined perfectly with each other. Halo supported the shell, lifted it up and spun it. Immense magical energy shot out unceasingly from it. No one wished to come close and touch it. Ganji and Pangjia looked at the turtle shell greedily. Their eyes couldn't conceal their dark desire. However, although Feng Rao had said that they didn't have any solution besides to stare and think, Feng Rao didn't answer. She hesitated for a while before moving towards Shi Yan. Feeling Feng Rao coming close to him, Shi Yan slightly knitted his brows. He accumulated his energy and put up his guard cautiously. Give it back to me. Han Di's dead. You don't need it anymore. As she could feel Shi Yan's vigilance, Feng Rao stopped walking, looking at him from a far distance. She beamed a faint smile and extended her jade-like arm. The exquisite azure tattoos seemed to be moving on her arm. Ganji and Pangjia suddenly looked at Shi Yan. Being astounded for a while, Ganji laughed evilly. Shi Yan, the Thunderbolt Ball is a rank 2 divine grade treasure. The lightning and thunder power of this ball is very dense and dangerous. It feels very good to use it and is very effective. You're experienced, I suppose? Do you really want to give it back to her? If I were you when I received something, I would never return it honestly. Pangjia also laughed bizarrely. It's a rank 2 divine grade treasure. Very useful to enhance your power. You have the lowest realm among us. With that treasure, you will have more support. If you give it back to her, will you be any different from a fool? She used you. She should pay you, right? Ganji and Pangjia took turns to give advice to Shi Yan as they wanted to separate him and the woman. Feng Rao didn't say anything. She just beamed a faint smile and looked at him as if she was waiting for his decision. Shi Yan also smiled, enjoying the thunderbolt ball in his hand. His smile became brighter. He had done something with that thunderbolt ball. He looked at Feng Rao and said nothing. You like it? Feng Rao parted her lips and smiled. Her eyebrows, like the new moon, arched slightly. If you like it, I can give it to you. However, I needed to do something. After that, I will give it to you. Okay? A gentleman won't take what the other likes. Keep your thunderbolt ball. Shi Yan chuckled and flicked his fingers. The thunderbolt ball flew out, turning into a blue lightning strike that fell into Feng Rao's hand. Fool! Stupid! Ganji and Pangjia snorted, their faces malevolent. He's smart. Feng Rao retrieved her thunderbolt ball. A bright smile appeared on her face. She glared at Ganji and Pangjia, then said, You are the stupid ones. You think your plan is good. Look what you've done now. Ganji and Pangjia grimaced even more. Shi Yan looked at Feng Rao seriously. When he saw that the woman didn't check the ball and instead put it into her fantasy sky ring right away, he beamed a sinister smile. Shi Yan understood well that Feng Rao, Ganji, and Pangjia were the same. She didn't care about him either. Otherwise, Feng Rao wouldn't have given him the thunderbolt ball to aid him in dealing with Han Di. She thought that Shi Yan's real abilities couldn't harm Han Di without the ball. And it was also the reason why Feng Rao had never thought that he could do something to her thunderbolt ball, which made her not check it. It was an instinctive disdain. A warrior at the third sky of King God realm would naturally not put a warrior 2 skies lower than him in his eyes. It wasn't that they weren't careful, they just didn't know how morbidly formidable Shi Yan was. The other 3 considered each other the strongest enemies, and Shi Yan, in their eyes, was just a foolish kid who knew nothing and couldn't influence this battle. To their disdain, Shi Yan wasn't angry. Quite the contrary, he felt happy. If someone doesn't know your real strength, he will ignore you. which troubles him much later in the battle with you. Shi Yan accumulated his energy. Quietly, his visage relaxed. He calmly prepared everything carefully. He wanted to see what these three could do after all. Chapter 797, Undying Wood. Chapter 797, Undying Wood. Rainbow light shot out everywhere from the center of the combined 5 forbidden areas. Gaps between those beams were visible. Feng Rao, Ganji, and Pang Jia stayed hidden in the gaps, looking at the turtle shell with a grim countenance. They started to use their energy to pull it. However, Feng Rao's sound power and Ganji's Pang Jia's special powers were all useless. Pang Jia shrank his body 10 times. He became just 1/10 of the size of a normal adult. He swayed between the beams to go closer to the shell. Then he extended his index finger, resizing it to be as small as a needle to inch towards and touch the turtle shell. Unfortunately, when his needle-like index finger approached the hard shell, a strange energy wave shot out. The ceasing light started to change. A rainbow light shot out like a ribbon, piercing through his index finger. Pang Jia retreated rapidly. His body was now even smaller than a dwarf. He couldn't help but shiver. When his index finger resumed its normal size, it was broken and bleeding. Pang Jia was frightened. He didn't dare try any more, retreating to a place far away and using medicine to apply to his wound. His eyes had a look of distress. His power was considered to have many advantages among the 3 of them. However, no matter how careful he was, he still got injured. This frightened him a lot. He didn't dare act rashly anymore. Ganji and Feng Rao thought of no solutions. Their eyes glued to that strange shell, unable to conceal the desires in their heart. Anyway, they had no solution for this headache-given matter. Shi Yan was still musing. He looked like he wasn't planning to take any action besides simply glaring at that shell. He didn't know what it was, but he knew for sure that the halo twirling around that hard shell could pierce through any kind of matter. Even if he got his god body at its greatest peak, he didn't dare try. After a while, they had made no progress. Feng Rao, Ganji, and Pang Jia frowned, raked through their fantasy sky rings, and criticizing each other. Their words became more malignant and sinister. They seemed like they would burst out fighting each other any time soon. The exquisite azure drawings on Feng Rao's smooth, white skin started to move when she was enraged, giving her a bizarre beauty. Although Shi Yan was busy, he looked nonchalant. He eyed the woman, Ganji, and Pang Jia without haste. Compared to the other 3, he looked more like an onlooker, someone who didn't care about what the results would be. I wonder if the jade token works, Feng Rao pondered for a while. She seemed to have something in her mind. She rose her hand, then grabbed something. The cube stone on Han Di's body flew up immediately, falling precisely into her jade palm, combining with the one she had. Ganji and Pang Jia got it. They frowned and threw her their square stones with a dark face. Shi Yan watched and found that their 4 square stones were exactly the same as Jiang Ji's stone. They seemed to make a key. The 4 stones combined to reveal the shape of a key. Feng Rao's group had their eyes brighten up as if they had finally found a solution they had never thought possible. They became excited looking at Shi Yan and shouting in unison, "Where's yours?" "Arg." Shi Yan couldn't help but beam a forced smile. He shook his head under their intense looks, showed them his hands, and shrugged. "I'm sorry. I don't have it. Jiang, Good didn't give you the stone." Feng Rao's beautiful eyes sparkled brutally. She was enraged. She thought that they could solve it, finally, but now the problem was Shi Yan. Ganji and Pang Jia darkened their faces. The murderous intent in their eyes was obvious. 3 different auras slithered like invisible toxic snakes surrounding Shi Yan. If he made a wrong move, they would kill him instantly. Shi Yan was stern inwardly. He couldn't hold his snort. He was staying the furthest from the source of the rainbow light. Sure, Yen moved quickly to the gap nearest to him. He gathered his energy to prepare for a battle with the rage of the other three. Feng, Rao, Ganji, and Pangjia had laid all of their hopes on the cube stones. Now they had 4 stones connected to each other and formed the shape of a key. It just needed one more piece to complete this key, which seemed to be able to open the way to that hard shell. The only exit was erased by Shi Yan's words. Of course they were enraged. Their looks with the brutal intentions, as thick as black ink, were aimed at Shi Yan coldly. Shi Yan's god soul suddenly got extremely agitated. He continually urged space power in his sea of consciousness. Flows of soul consciousness with space energy twirled around his sea of consciousness and covered his soul altar. The surging agitation gradually vanished. The soul confinement that the other 3 planted on his soul was ineffective. A strange light sparkled in Feng Rao's exquisite and eccentric face. Her eyes blinked as she stooped and sighed. Not bad. You can dodge our soul confinement. No wonder why you aren't afraid at all. Seems like we've underestimated you. I don't have it, really. Even if you kill me, it's no use. Sure, Yen smiled miserably. What about getting out there and bringing Jiang back here? *CK it. Do you think we have so much time? Do you think you can get out of the extreme purgatory field that easy? Pangjia couldn't help but scold loudly. Sure, Yen, that is the undying wood. It is not the turtle shell like you thought. Shortly, a soul popped up in his sea of consciousness. The vermilion bird, True Flame, was talking to him. I have the vermilion bird's knowledge. The undying wood's really marvelous. It's the top treasure of the wood class in the 5 elements. It's tougher than the toughest metal. There's no sharp weapon that could cut it. Undying wood. Shi Yan was cautious discreetly. He was moved. Besides its hardness, what are its other characteristics? Strange treasure undying wood of the wood class has the magical but natural wooden texture. With this magical texture, the blacksmith with supernatural power could portray the formations according to that wood texture to create the most unimaginable and subtle abilities. Can I approach it? Didn't you take in a large amount of wood essence chi in the last barrier you've just broken? Use that essence chi to cover your entire body and try, the vermilion bird, True Flame told him. My information comes from the vermilion bird before he left the Grace mainland. We don't have deeper knowledge about the undying wood yet, so it is not clear enough. I heard that the undying wood comes from a divine tree after it became rotten. But this piece isn't rotten, so it's called undying wood. Extremely strange, right? The undying wood comes from a rotten divine tree. The tree was rotten, but its wood wasn't rotten. What kind of logic was that? Shi Yan was surprised. He listened to the heaven flame attentively. He suddenly had a strange feeling that the creation of the undying would contain some truth of nature. The wood texture barrier you've broken simulates the natural texture of the undying wood. Since you've got it magically, can you condense it and use it to cover your body entirely? At least you can cover one arm of yours to touch it? Continued the vermilion bird, True Flame. Sure, Yen was astounded for a while. He instinctively tried as he was told. He urged and drew the wood essence, chi, from his flesh and bone, trying to pour it into one arm. His arm became brown and gray, just like a dried tree trunk. It looked a bit strange to him. At this moment, the sinister looks of Feng Rao, Pangjia, and Ganji still gazed at Shi Yan tightly. The murderous intent was so heavy that it could burst in any minute. Don't act rashly, you guys! Shi Yan suddenly shouted, his face solemn. Wait a minute and give me time to try. I'm a blacksmith. I have knowledge of formations and barriers. This is why I was able to break the barriers faster than you guys. Yeah, it's the barrier that creates those fatal light beams. Let me try. Feng Rao's group halted, their faces astounded. They knew something was happening in that central area, so they knew it wasn't the barrier like Shi Yan had said. They doubted his words. However, they were shaken upon hearing that Shi Yan wanted to try. They thought that, in the worst case, Shi Yan would be crushed into pieces in that source of light. In that case, they didn't need to do anything to erase him, and they could even have a chance to observe the bursting energy of that fatal source. The three agreed tacitly. They stopped gathering energy and just gave a snort while watching Shi Yan move. "Keep your eye on the three for me." A thought was sent, and the heaven flames started to fly around his soul altar. They accumulated energy and waited for a chance. More wood essence chi was urged out of his body and created a layer covering him entirely. Shortly, he became a shriveled tree log, his entire body brown and gray, like a rotten tree. In this special form, he carefully touched the light beams next to him. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Contact between the light and his finger created strange sounds. The sharp light seemed to be softened magically. The tremendous piercing power vanished. Shi Yan was excited. A bright smile hung on the corner of his mouth. Ganji, Feng Rao, and Peng Jia noticed his moves. Divine light sparkled gloriously in their eyes as they gawked disbelievingly. Shi Yan laughed contentedly while shooting like a brown light towards the undying wood. He didn't bother with the scorching looks of the other three burning his back. Beams of light shining on his body were all softened. When the steam arose on all over his body, Shi Yan descended right over the undying wood. He didn't say anything but grabbed it fiercely. Tens of thousands of rainbow beams disappeared into the undying wood at the moment his fingers touched the piece of wood. The undying wood became simple and natural, but it was as heavy as a mountain. The subtle, exquisite wood texture of this piece looked like a strange but magical star map. Pang Jia, Ganji, and Feng Rao's eyes reddened instantly. They didn't say anything, but released their god domains, dashing toward Shi Yan at their max speed. 3 waves of formidable energy swept over like 3 meteors, shooting across the sky with an imposing momentum. Rumble, 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 rumble. Shattering and collapsing sounds echoed from the 5 palaces. The earth cracked. The mountain shook and collapsed. The barrier covering this area was torn apart. Immense gray mist flooded into the place furiously. The strange magnetic field of the extreme purgatory field vanished into thin air. Chapter 798, Star Map. Chapter 798, Star Map. The 5 pieces of undying wood had joined and created a strange star map. Shi Yan skimmed through it and found a smalt that looked like the mark of the treasure on a treasure map. As he had been with Ziyao for a while in the glorious Amethyst Star, Shi Yan had a general knowledge of the Raging Flame Star area's layout. At first glance, he knew that the marked spot was near the border of the land of God Punishment and the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. It was the most magical area of the land where people could hide from the soul consciousness searching. Besides the Lonesome Dead territory, the land of God Punishment had some more special areas similar to the Lonesome Dead territory. The location on the map was such a similar spot. However, he hadn't had enough time to study carefully because Feng Rao, Ganji, and Peng Jia stormed towards him, trying to snatch the star map in his hand. While snorting, Shi Yan immediately put the star map into his fantasy sky ring. Seeing the palace collapsing and the barriers disappearing, he made up his mind quickly to use the star power. His soul consciousness cooperated with space power, urging all of his energy. Just like a flow of shooting light, Shi Yan rocketed into the sky of the extreme purgatory field. The barriers shattered. All the energy sealing the extreme purgatory field disappeared. There was nothing constraining them now. A flow of light shot directly up into the sky. Shortly, it disappeared from the gray cloud layer of the purgatory star, heading towards the immense star area. Beneath him were Feng Rao, Ganji, and Peng Jia chasing close after. A flame burned angrily in their eyes. They all escaped the extreme, purgatory, field, entering the dead, quiet outer space. Those 3 people had dreamed of the star map for a long time. They had invested a lot of time and effort. At the very last moment, Shi Yan had interfered and taken what should have been theirs. They could hardly accept this. Although they all had the 3rd sky of King God Realm cultivation base, Shi Yan's star power was magical. He was moving forward in the trajectories of the stars, making curve after curve in outer space. At the same time, he urged space energy to cross spaces in a short time. Feng Rao, Ganji, and Pangjia couldn't get to him immediately. They could only stare as his figure disappeared further and further. Rage surged in their hearts. While the 4 silhouettes flew away from the extreme purgatory field, the guard of this special prison, staying on the other side of the star, spotted them and the commotion they were stirring. Shortly, the jailer spread his order. War chariots flew out one by one, entering dark outer space. The extreme purgatory field was a magical area of the dark firmament divine nation. It was the training place for the new generation of experts. And now it suddenly had a commotion that made the jailer freak out. He hastened to report Du Tianlu on the event. The war chariots of the extreme purgatory field turned in the sky before moving into outer space. Experts guarding the planet came to the extreme purgatory field. Seeing the earth shaking and mountain collapsing in that area, their faces darkened. They knew something really troublesome had just happened, and it was out of their ability to control it. When Du Tianlu got the news, he was frightened and indignant at the same time. He came there at his max speed and reported what happened to the owner of the dark firmament divine nation, Du Tianji. Unfortunately, Du Tianji seemed to seclude and cultivate. Du Tianli's report sank like a rock into the sea. He received no response. This made Du Tianli more anxious. He constantly ordered the jailer to pursue and capture the escapees. It was very dark and cold in outer space. Shi Yan squinted while his soul altar was spinning, urging the Star Power Upanishad and Space Power Upanishad to continue its powers at the same time. Waves of space energy were rippling through his body. They seemed to be the doors that connected space to space shortly. His figure pierced through waves like a meteor. He was moving so fast that Feng Rao, Ganji, and Pangjia could only sense him vaguely. It was going to be very difficult to catch him. *CK it. We were all wrong. We've been watching that area for a long time, and finally we let that kid take it all. Ganji cursed, his face dark and grimaced. If I catch that brat, I will skin him alive and draw his bones out. Pangjia looked ferocious, talking through his gritted teeth. Feng Rao stayed quiet. She was gloomy as resentment filled her heart. She had thought that she had used Shi Yan well. However, everything went the opposite of what she planned, and it was now out of her reach. She couldn't imagine why Shi Yan, at his first sky of King God Realm, could escape with such speed in the star sea. He was so fast that they could only keep up in sensing him. They could never come closer. He has only the first sky of King God Realm cultivation base. His energy should be limited. Since he is running madly like that, he will drain his energy fast, Ganji said after contemplating for a while with a malicious look. Just let him be content flying for a while. I don't think he can drop us in the end. Wait until his energy is drained considerably. Then we will be able to catch him. True, the first sky of King God Realm has a limited endurance. He can't keep using his energy for a long time, Pangjia nodded. As long as we know the direction he is going, I think we can capture him. Be careful. When we flew out of the Purgatory Star, I saw the war chariots flying out. Seems like the jailer of the extreme Purgatory field reported the situation and sent someone up here. Feng Rao wasn't as confident as they were. Those who belong to the dark firmament divine nation aren't easy to deal with. We shouldn't let them spot us. Afterward, Ganji and Pangjia held solemn faces. They all knew how intimidating the experts of the dark, firmament, divine nation were. The three of them immediately concealed their auras and retrieved part of their living energy fluctuations. They squeezed their jade tokens to stimulate the magical energy in it. Those jade tokens weren't only effective in the extreme purgatory field. After they left the place, they could still prevent the sensing ability of the warriors. After they had released the energy in their jade tokens, their auras and life energy faded away. They became invisible in the galaxy. Warriors standing in the purgatory stars wore chariots, couldn't sense anything using their soul consciousness. Begrudgingly, the war chariots scattered and started to search on a larger scale. Thus, their formation was stretched. Although the war chariots used the energy of divine crystals, they couldn't be faster than the third sky of King God realm experts when they used the surging energy in their bodies. Gradually, those war chariots were left far behind Pangjia, Ganji, and Feng Rao. Shi Yan, of course, understood that Feng Rao, Ganji, and Pangjia weren't easy to mess with. He didn't dare pause using the powers of his star and space Upanishad created in his soul altar. His flying was now like a light arrow. As he flew at max speed, he couldn't check his location on the map. He just knew vaguely that he was heading toward the land of God punishment and the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. This star map should have been created by the former imperial master of the dark firmament divine nation a long time ago. The marked location should contain an earth-shattering secret. Otherwise, Feng Rao's group wouldn't have spent several hundred years hiding just to take this map. They sure wanted to get the secret of this map. He didn't know what the secret was or its significance, but if this thing had fallen into his hands, he wouldn't hand it out easily. This was especially true for Ganji, Pangjia, and Feng Rao. None of them had good intentions towards him. Feng Rao had used him to deal with Handi, so she could have a free hand to grab the star map. Sure, Yen wasn't a nice man, since he was used and now he knew he had a big secret in that star map. Why would he not take it anyway? Sure, Yen didn't really bother with the dead pursuit by the 3 experts at the third sky of King God realm. He didn't think that they could take his life easily. Staying in that forbidden land and breaking layer after layer of barriers, the understanding of natural powers and his powers Upanishad was carved deeper into his mind. Shi Yan believed that if he was given time to comprehend those principles and had abundant energy, breaking to the new level, the second sky of King God realm wouldn't be such a tough task. He had this confidence. He was confident that when he reached the second sky of King God realm, even if Ganji, Feng Rao, and Pangjia joined hands to fight him, they wouldn't be able to catch him. Since he was confident, he wasn't afraid of them anymore. He sneered and accelerated. The essence chi from Handi's corpse was collected and refined in his acupuncture points. Gradually, energy started to gush out. Shi Yan cracked a smile, guiding those beams of mysterious energy in his body. He was moving even faster. If it was in the past, when the mysterious martial spirit was refining the essence chi from the dead, Shi Yan couldn't be distracted because he would risk negative feelings backfiring on him. However, after the period of breaking barriers, his soul became steady. Thus, the negative feelings didn't affect him much. His mind was still calm and sound. With the supplemental energy, his essence chi was refilled the second time. His moving speed wasn't reduced by energy shortage. Feng Rao, Ganji, and Pangjia were trying their best to find him in the galaxy. Half a month had passed quietly. Although they were full of confidence, the 3 were now exhausted. They thought that since Shi Yan had only the first sky of King God realm cultivation base, he would slow down early from loss of endurance. They were all wrong. After half a month, they had consumed half of their energy. They had to slow down. Shi Yan's speed didn't change. It actually increased significantly. The other 3 were exhausted. Their face grimaced even more. Does that mother asterisk cur have only the first sky of King God realm cultivation base? Were we all wrong? Ganji panted, talking foul-mouthed. This was the sign that they used energy excessively. Pang Jia gritted his teeth, his eyes like that of an angry ghost. He breathed heavily. If I can catch him, I will torture him to death. This brat is tough enough. Seems we got tricked. We thought he couldn't be a threat, and turns out he the one who got it all. Feng Rao regretted it too much. She wanted to kill herself. At this moment, the three of them didn't dare to look down on Shi Yan anymore. Being able to move in outer space 15 days continually at fast speed, and his energy wasn't running out yet. Who has ever met such a first sky of King God realm warrior? They cursed as their hearts sank. They now didn't consider Shi Yan a small character anymore. They were vigilant, discreetly. They thought that when they saw Shi Yan, they had to pull themselves all together, and they shouldn't be careless, leading to capsize their boats. Ah! Feng Rao suddenly shouted in awe. That brat isn't good now. His speed has slowed down 2 times. Fast! Faster! We must get him. Ganji and Pang Jia put on the excited visage. Chapter 799, Bear the Fangs. Chapter 799, Bear the Fangs. On a massive floating meteorite, gray-brown clusters of rocks scattered. This place was bleak, lonesome, and cold. No living energy, fluctuation, could be found. Shi Yan paled, revealing that he was exhausted as he consumed too much energy. A gleam of insignificant desperation crossed his eyes. Ganji and Pang Jia had their faces brightened up. They couldn't hold in their sinister laughter while walking toward Shi Yan. Feng Rao was careful. First, she frowned and surveyed the surroundings. Seeing no barrier or formation, she exhaled in relief, but still put up guard. She sneered, so no more running. Shi Yan forced a smile. Can't run any longer. Kid, you do have guts. You dare pluck out the tiger's tooth. You dare be greedy and steal what is ours. You don't even know how to treasure your life. Pang Jia grinned, fiendishly, taking action first. Ganji slowly approached, launching his god domain. As soon as the 100-time gravitational field appeared, it pressed the rocks, which cracked and exploded. This is for you. Shi Yan acted as if he was really frightened and that he couldn't dodge his fate. He threw the star map made of the undying wood without any hesitation. The thing shot across the area, flying toward the middle area between the other 3. Ganji, Pang Jia, and Feng Rao showed their greed. They jolted immediately to grab the thing. Feng Rao was still vigilant. Her plump lips curled a cold curve as she threw the thunderbolt ball out. Immediately, several thousand azure lightning strikes slithered towards Shi Yan like a pit of snakes. Shi Yan seemed to know the power of the thunderbolt ball. He paled and retreated. However, since those several thousand beams of lighting were connected directly to Feng Rao and her pure energy in her body, it was hard to dodge them all. Although Shi Yan was fast, he still received 10 or more strikes. He screamed painfully. His god body was charred with thick burns. It seemed his god body had been exhausted and now received even more wounds. Shi Yan was put to the point where he couldn't hold it anymore. The lightning struck him out of the place into the cold, starry space. As Ganji and Pang Jia saw Feng Rao attacking Shi Yan and how he got hurt by the lightning and fell off the meteorite, they didn't focus on killing him. They hurled themselves towards the star map. Before they had come here, they had a plan. Right when they saw Shi Yan, they would kill him first. However, when they saw Shi Yan throwing the star map out, they forgot their initial plan. Greed had dominated their minds. They wanted to take the star map at any cost. Uncontrollably, Ganji and Pang Jia immediately attacked each other without showing mercy or politeness. When Feng Rao saw Shi Yan get hit by the thunderbolt ball, she didn't dare waste time. She understood that Shi Yin could dodge his death for now, but it didn't mean that he could avoid their ears and eyes everywhere. Thus, she decided to join the battle to compete for the star map. As they were all at the third sky of King God Realm, when any of them grabbed the star map, he or she just needed to flee away at their max speed, and the others couldn't catch up with him or her. Thus, whoever touched the star map first would gain a significant advantage. At this moment, the three brutal villains at the third sky of King God Realm burst out the deadly battle for a star map that hid a tremendous secret. They attacked each other furiously and mercilessly. Their powers were urged to the acme as they hated the fact that they couldn't kill whoever went at the fastest speed to grab the star map first. Staying on another meteorite in the dark sky, Shi Yan's eyes were cold and sinister. His stiff mouth showed his cold and harsh intentions. He gritted his teeth and brushed off the azure lightning strikes on his body. Each of these azure lightning strikes was sharp and powerful. They cut his body fiercely and left fine cuts on his skin. Since Feng Rao had the third sky of King God Realm and her thunderbolt ball was a divine grade treasure, Shi Yin hardly bore its attacks. Fortunately, his power was refined and his god body had been quenched many times. Now it had the toughness that normal people couldn't even imagine. Sure, Yin didn't get hurt badly. He just needed to urge his dead power Upanishad to brush them off. Shortly after, he destroyed all the lightning strikes that had managed to get in his body. He had spent 10 drops of immortal demon blood to heal his bleeding cuts. His wounds healed quickly. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Furious energy waves swarmed over from the massive meteorite in front of him. Shi Yin understood that the three experts were trying to kill each other. For that star map, they demonstrated their mightiest powers. The vicious intent in his eyes became darker. He stooped and sneered, but didn't hasten to show himself yet. The three of them were the experts with a greater realm than his. Also, their powers were strange and supernatural. If he decided to be stubborn and played with them 1-on-3, he would die a pathetic death. After half a month of running madly, the other three had consumed a lot of their energy. As they were attacking each other crazily, no matter what the result was, their powers would be weakened badly. When their battle ended, Shi Yin could save a lot of efforts. Thus, he had to bear Feng Rao's attack to erase the others' doubts. He had given them the thought that he was hurt badly and that he wouldn't be able to create any trouble later. Indeed, as soon as Feng Rao saw him get hit by the lightning strikes bloodily, her tense nerves had been relaxed. When she saw Ganji and Pang Jia fighting with each other, she didn't bother eradicating him. Instead, she joined the battle immediately. If Feng Rao had been more careful, she would have flown out there to check Shi Yan's real condition. She wouldn't have been so incautious. Too bad she got another wrong guess of Shi Yan's abilities. Shi Yan swallowed the broad, bean-like pellets and medicines. Shi Yan hid quietly by the meteorite, trying his best to recover quickly. Ear-splitting explosions reverberated. Energy pressed the rock, which exploded, shooting out of the massive meteorite near him. Seeing such scenes, Shi Yan felt excited. He laughed continually as he waited for a chance to take action. The medicinal efficacy melted in his body, turning into the immense vitality that nurtured his internal organs. Half a month of running crazily couldn't really wear him out. With the essence chi from Han Di's dead body, his condition was much better than what the other three saw. Pretending to be weak to lure the enemies and giving them chances to hurt him were all part of his plans. Everything was playing according to his script. Shi Yan waited patiently and just sneered while waiting for the battle on the meteorite to end. He would wait until the sounds of the fierce battle stopped. Those explosions were terrible. They had shattered the entire meteorite. From his location, he could see massive holes there. The meteorite near him crumpled. Rocks shot out everywhere. The battle taking place over there must have been formidable. Shi Yan urged his energy to cover his entire body, hiding and moving toward the battle area. Crack, crack, crack. Giant rocks under Ganji's manipulation were bombarding aimlessly. Each of those rocks was around a moo of land. When they curved in the air, the energy they contained was so intimidating. Pang Jia shrank his body to 1/10 of an adult size. He seemed to be cooperating with Ganji to fight Feng Rao. The star map lay still where Shi Yan had thrown it. It seemed like no one had touched it yet. Ah! Feng Rao cried, the entire power of her body fusing with her sound, turning into an invisible spear that smashed Ganji's rocks into crumbles. The three of them were entangling each other and draining their energy rapidly. After spending half a month running like crazy without a short break to recover, 70% to 80% of their power had been consumed. At this moment, their god domains weren't as strong as they used to be. Their fighting competencies had been decreased 1 level. From what Shi Yan could see, Feng Rao was closest to him. He could see that her exquisite face was pale, which was the sign of consuming a lot of energy. Ganji and Pang Jia were also worn out. However, they all clenched their jaws and resisted as they thought that if they could kill the others, they would be the ultimate winner. Gravity lock! Ganji suddenly shouted. The gravitational field covering his body shrank before bursting out much stronger. Feng Rao's body, floating in the air, sank down as if she got a whole mountain put on her shoulders. She felt helter-skelter. Pang Jia shrank his body, ambushing an area. His arms were exposed like 2 slithering, boneless snakes. A flow of cold and malicious energy immediately attacked Feng Rao's tender body. Feng Rao shuddered. Her figure became more unstable. Several hundred rocks, each of them as big as a moo of land, fell directly on Feng Rao and buried her. Ganji and Pang Jia cheered. They didn't care if Feng Rao was still alive or not and hurriedly flew to that star map. A minute ago, they had joined hands to deal with the woman, and now they started to attack each other. Different energies impacted in the void. Light shot out dazzlingly above the star map. Pang Jia was weaker. He spat out a mouthful of blood. His shrunk god body shattered under the impact. His eyes became empty. Ganji laughed crazily. "You're still an amateur compared to me." While talking, he extended his hand to grab the star map. He was so contented thinking that his 200-year of effort had been rewarded marvelously. However, the buzzing hissing echoed right at this moment. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 3 blinding lights flashed, then disappeared. They then stabbed Ganji's hand, piercing through, and pinned it on a rock next to the star map. At the same moment, an imposing punch created by starlight descended grumblingly like a mallet of the archangel, covering Pang Jia's flying body. Crack! Crack! Sounds of breaking bones echoed from Pang Jia's body. His god body exploded. His bones jutted out from the mess of his bloody flesh while his face was covered in blood. He was dying under this stealthy attack. The massive starlight punch was condensed by countless star dots. After it finished its stealthy attack, it didn't stop but continued to pound on Feng Rao, who was still buried under so many rocks. Crack, crack, crack. Massive rocks burst off in the furious screams of Feng Rao. The starlight punch had made a formidable hole on this meteorite. Feng Rao's beautiful body was exposed in the middle of the deep pit. She was wounded. Blood and the delicate tattoos on her body created a red, eccentric, and inspiring drawing. Shi Yan's cold and harsh body appeared like a ghost next to Pang Jia. He didn't hesitate at all as he gathered space power covering Pang Jia, who didn't have a bit of energy to move a finger now. He then cut Pang Jia's limbs cut and his soul altar exploded shortly after. As Pang Jia had just died, Shi Yan dashed through the place, approaching Ganji. He laughed fiendishly, baring his bloodthirsty fangs. Chapter 800, Cut Dead. Chapter 800, Cut Dead. Shi Yan's ambush on Pang Jia and Feng Rao were deadly, particularly to Feng Rao, who was pressed deeper into her pit so that she wouldn't be able to wiggle out of there. These serial actions actually happened faster than a slow talk. Ganji was pinned in the hard rock by the 3 bone thorns that pierced through his hand. Seeing Shi Yan gliding through the air to approach him, Ganji felt an extreme rage and pain. At the same time, he wanted to vomit blood. No matter how hard he had imagined, he couldn't predict Shi Yan's dark and vicious mind. Shi Yan had condensed a chain from starlight to bind him tightly. Ganji discolored. Crack, crack. He tried to urge his energy without caring about his bleeding hand. The gravitational field was rising one more time. 200 times heavier gravity. Shi Yan sank under the gravitational field effects while dashing forward. He fell toward Ganji. "Kid, you court death!" Ganji roared indignantly. A massive rock under his feet flew out instantly like a cannonball, shelling Shi Yan grumblingly. Boom, boom, boom. The starlight chains thrust through that massive rock. Chipped rocks shot out massively. Shi Yan stood like a mighty storm inside the shower of rock, his face cold and grating. His god domain changed all of a sudden. Space confinement. The rocks that curved and exploded in the air were suddenly suspended in the air. They stayed still strangely in the void. Even Ganji, with his 3rd sky of King God Realm cultivation base and his magical power, was affected. He could only stare at Shi Yan, who came closer as the energy in his body stopped circulating. Break! Ganji faced the sky and screamed. His face reddened as he furiously urged his power to break the space confinement. Ganji's essence, chi, condensed into the light blades that shot up into the sky from his body, aimed at Shi Yan. Shi Yan's face remained unchanged. While he was hovering in the sky, his powers, Upanishad, changed again. A slit was torn near the horizon, engulfing countless light blades that shot out from Ganji's body. With an imposing momentum, Shi Yan changed his god domain a 2nd time, shining massive hand seals as big as the doors pressed down, bombarding Ganji. Boom, boom, boom. The dead seals pounding on Ganji's body were like giant hammers. His god body had many concave spots. He became extremely exhausted. As the hand seals contained the mysteries of death, as soon as they hit Ganji's god body, they immediately started wreaking havoc on his bodily functions, preventing him from gathering his essence chi. The old man could only attempt to dodge with futile attempts. Ganji, Pang Jia, and Feng Rao spent half a month strenuously chasing after him without any pause to refill their energy. Right when they arrived at this meteorite, the 3 had engaged in a battle, which was also the 2nd time they had to use massive amounts of energy. After being ambushed, one of Ganji's hands was useless now. Shi Yan's dead seals had shelled him badly. Eventually, Ganji was hurt severely. The vitality in his body was running out under the dead energy invasion. Ganji's face and god body paled like a paper sheet. Blood trickled from the corners of his mouth. He was distressed. Shi Yan hadn't shown even a hint of his mercy. His thought flickered, and the wheezing sound of the 3 bone thorns arose again. Shi Yan was gathering and condensing the dead energy unceasingly together with the negative energy. Massive dead seals appeared in the air one more time. They looked more like the evil eyes gazing at Ganji. They pressed down with a loud crash. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The whistle of the 3 bone thorns was so ear-piercingly loud that it felt like it could even stir up people's souls. It made Ganji's his heart crack. Crack, crack, crack. As the dead seals were pressing down, the area where Ganji was lying looked like a block of tofu under a harsh impact. Chipped rocks became powder, scattering with the wind. The light cage Ganji was trying to maintain remained deformed, revealing his pale god body. The bone thorns thrust into Ganji's chest, smashing his internal organs. His broken bones and pieces of intestines splashed out from his body. Ganji was completely damaged under this strike. His god domain disappeared, and the 100 times heavier gravitational field vanished. "We can talk." Ganji screamed. He finally expressed true fear. He faced the sky and cried, "Give me time to talk. We can negotiate." Boom! The massive starlight mallet pounded from the sky like a meteor falling into the earth. It hit Ganji right at his chest. Right when he finished, his god body couldn't hold it anymore. It exploded shortly. Cut limbs shot out as his body fell. "I'm sorry. You have the 3rd sky of King God Realm Cultivation Base. I can't afford to be reckless." "Sure," Yen finally said something as he landed by Ganji. The 3-bone thorns spun around him like 3 lightning strikes. Although Ganji's god body was destroyed, his soul altar wasn't shattered. In this given circumstance, he knew that he couldn't resist Sure Yen anymore. Ganji didn't hesitate, making his soul altar fly out in an attempt to escape into outer space to preserve his god soul. As long as his soul seal hadn't been damaged when his god body was destroyed, he had 2 options, of which he could choose to find a host and cultivate to restore, or he could use a pregnant woman's baby to resurrect. As long as his god soul wasn't eradicated, he still had hope. With the right period of time, it wasn't impossible to regain his current realm. The soul altar was a magical thing that nothing could compare to. Secret treasures that could break the soul altar were really rare in this world. Ganji's 3-tiered soul altar floated like a ghost. He threw a glare at Sure Yen with resentment before running away. "Get out." Sure Yan's face was icy cold. He touched his glabella and his soul altar flew out. The dark section of the 2nd tier in his soul altar instantly released an eccentric and evil suction force. Ganji's 3-tiered soul altar struggled. His god's soul felt the deepest fear ever. However, no matter how hard he had shaken, the soul altar couldn't escape Sure Yan's black, hole-like soul altar. Ganji's soul altar disappeared, little by little. Sure Yan's eccentric power, Upanishad, had swallowed the 3-tiered soul altar, leaving nothing. Crack! At this moment, a strange sound arose. The echoing and energy condensed, shooting towards Sure Yan's chest. As his soul altar had flown out of his body, his god body became weaker. After the impact of that energy, blood in the shape of a flower bloomed on his chest. A hole was broken open right there. Crack, crack, crack. Feng Rao, who used to have no bit of energy remaining, floated up from her pit, wiping away the blood trickles from her mouth and her body. She was stunned, looking at the soul altar floating outside Sure Yan's body. Feng Rao had never heard or seen any supernatural powers, Upanishad, that could engulf the soul altar. This bizarre and malignant power had never appeared in the Raging Flamestar area before. None of the people there had ever heard about it. Such evil existence made Feng Rao shiver in fright. "Kid, what kind of evil powers Upanishad are you cultivating?" Feng Rao paled, holding the thunderbolt ball. She looked quite unnatural. While she was talking, each of her words was fused with her power Upanishad. For the time being, the extremely loud sound reverberated, creating a tremendous sound wave swarming toward Sure Yen. Feng Rao had startled Sure Yen. He didn't think much, immediately calling his soul altar back to his god body. Sure Yen didn't bother with a hole in his chest, using the space power as the foundation to create the god domain. Space blockade. Each syllable falling in his god domain was frozen for a while. Sure Yen didn't reply to her. Starlight shot out from his 10 fingers, breaking her words with a cold face. Sure Yen conveniently grabbed the star map and put it away. He turned and gazed at Feng Rao, his visage somber. "It seems that it is not only me who calculates a lot." Feng Rao's conditions were much better than what Sure Yen had thought. Ganji and Pangjia had joined hands to attack her, putting her under the mass of rocks. Shiryan had pounded her using the massive starlight punch. Although Feng Rao had been hurt continually, at this moment she looked robust. The energy was circulating vigorously in her body, which proved that her essence qi was still abundant. This woman's competence was beyond Shiryan's imagination, and it was indeed intimidating. I've still calculated wrong. Feng Rao's face was dark and cold. I've calculated that Ganji and Pangjia would use tens of thousands of rock to attack me. I would wait under the pile of rocks they had put on me until they finished their battle. Then I planned on coming out and cleaning it up. I didn't calculate that you could interfere and hurt me the second time. She looked at Shiryan angrily. The cunning one should be you. Ganji, Pangjia, and I had underestimated you. And today they are dead from your hands, the hands of the one that no one thought was strong enough. You've gained the upper hand. I think Ganji and Pangjia couldn't close their eyes even after their death now. Shiryan shook his head mockingly. I have the lowest realm here. If I haven't used tricks, I would have been killed quickly. He didn't hasten to take action. The bleeding hole in his chest had several broken vessels. Once he was engaged in a battle, they would affect his energy circulating. While he was talking, the immortal demon blood was urged to heal the wounds. It seemed that Feng Rao was also thinking the same thing. She understood that Shiryan was tough. At the same time, Feng Rao was also wounded. Before she talked to him, she had swallowed pellets and medicines. She was recovering her energy quietly. She had the third sky of King God Realm cultivation base, and the pellets she used were all divine grade ones. She believed her recovery speed was faster than Shiryan's. Ganji and Pangjia were all dead. This area was bleak and isolated. No one would pass by. In other words, she had only one enemy, which was Shiryan, of course. As long as she could kill Shiryan, she could finally achieve her goal. I have never heard about any wicked powers Upanishad that can swallow the soul altar. I'm curious. Who are you after all? Feng Rao still maintained a distance from Shiryan, as she was afraid that he would take action when she wasn't vigilant. She was talking while also staying on guard. I'm also curious about what's hidden in that star map. Why is it worth several hundred years of your time, and even your life? Shiryan smiled. The star map emerged on his palm. He cocked his head to look at it before looking back at Feng Rao. Will you explain it to me? If you tell me the method and the power that you used to swallow the soul altar, I will tell you what the star map hides. How does that sound? Feng Rao gently wiped the blood on her body. Her clothes were short, not enough to conceal the marvelous features of her body. Today they were even more ragged, exposing her mesmerizing glamour. While she moved her jade-like hand, blue tattoo glistened strangely and beautifully, which were able to sway people's souls. Come forward. We should talk. Feng Rao walked forward honestly. While her long legs were moving, her beauty flashed from time to time. Dreamy words came out from her mouth that made people drunk and listen to it. Shiryan's soul trembled. He couldn't help but think that she was starting to look hotter. The lustful flame of desire was ignited in the deep place of his heart. He started to gasp. He understood that this woman was attacking him. This was a seducing sound. Chapter 801. A Sensual Bloody Battle. Chapter 801. A Sensual Bloody Battle. Feng Rao walked step by step. Her flawless, snow-white, soft skin was exposed. The blood stains on her body seemed to merge with the blue tattoos on her body. They all vanished. Her ragged, tight robe couldn't hide her generous glamour. While she was walking, her beautiful thighs parted, and vaguely the delightful sight between them flashed from time to time, which could make a man's nose bleed, unable to control the innermost desire. While she was talking, her nasal sound was heavy, releasing alluring moans. They were like the drum beats stirring up the sea in Shi Yan's heart, which started to seethe vehemently. The affection in her beautiful eyes was as deep as the ocean that could melt people's souls, making their god bodies weakened. This look and her evilly beautiful body had provided a seducing enticement that could make people's soul obsequious. Shi Yan couldn't bear this inviting gesture further. Killing is not good. We can shake hands and discuss unhappiness. We should cooperate well, right? Feng Rao chuckled mildly while swaying her generous body to pose her endless glamour. Shi Yan's eyes reddened. Anyway, it wasn't because he was using the third sky of Rampage Realm. He was charmed. He gasped slightly, his eyes like hot fire from gazing at Feng Rao's body. He walked uncontrollably toward Feng Rao. Feng Rao stuck out her seducing tongue, licking her lips and revealing her stunning bearings. Shi Yan's breathing became hard. Feng Rao could even hear his breathing from 10 meters away. She became happier as she was content discreetly. Although her eyes were filled with endless affection, her heart was cold and sinister. To her sound power, the closer she was to the target, the greater the chance of success. Her attack would become more intimidating. Bringing Shi Yan closer, she wanted to kill him with one strike, leaving him no chance for a counterattack. With her experience gained during this period, she didn't dare look down on Shi Yan anymore. Shi Yan was now the most dangerous rival, much more dangerous than Ganji and Pengjia. She also knew that Shi Yan's schemes were wild and dark. She was afraid of being trapped unknowingly. She wouldn't attack rashly until Shi Yan touched her. And then, just like he had lost his soul somewhere, Shi Yan's hot eyes glued to her while he walked towards her. Eventually, he reached Feng Rao. Good, then, we can talk more. Why would we need to risk our lives, right? Feng Rao chuckled more. Her alluring, charming voice ran directly into his heart. She extended one soft, jade-like hand to touch the bleeding hole on Shi Yan's chest. Her eyes observed Shi Yan's face all the time, not missing a single moment. When she spotted any signs on his face, she would attack immediately and then retreat. Shi Yan's space power had the nemesis effect on her power. She knew that his power could make her freeze for a while. At the moment, she didn't dare relax her tense nerves. Extending her jade-like hand, she gazed at Shi Yan's face cautiously. A small section of her middle finger had probed into the bleeding hole in Shi Yan's chest. Ag! Shi Yan roared, but his eyes were still dull. He embraced Feng Rao's body, pushing her against a big rock. A gleam of fear sparkled in her eyes. However, she didn't dare move rashly because Shi Yan's countenance was still dull. Apparently, he was still under her alluring voice control. Thus, although he was hugging her tight, she thought that it was just his masculine instinct. She was still happy discreetly. Her jade-like inched into the hole in his chest. Just a little bit further, and she could grab Shi Yan's heart and squeeze it off. At this moment, Shi Yan was hugging her tight. He did what any other man would do, his hands moving towards her ample rear end and waist. Trying not to show her disgust, Feng Rao continued smiling. However, she gave a cold gaze into Shi Yan's eyes. Her hand had touched the bleeding hole in Shi Yan's chest and was about to reach a broken vein. Feng Rao discolored. Her succulent red lips parted, releasing the fatal sound. At this moment, an icy cold energy covered and entered her body. It then started to rage. At the same time, her leather robe was ripped apart. She didn't have time to react before feeling something invade into the slit between her legs, something as hot as burning fire. Extreme pain swarmed over her. There was fear in Feng Rao's eyes. Her thoughts shifted and she realized that her virginity was gone. Looking at Shi Yan, she saw the mocking and ridiculing look in his eyes that previously appeared dull and dumb. Ah! The extreme pain came from her lower body. Feng Rao couldn't help but scream. She felt like her lower body was torn apart under this bastard's strong attack. She couldn't adjust her body to endure such pain. However, she was more frightened to find out that the member of this bastard had sent the evil energy that could possibly cut off her life force from her body. From between her legs, this energy spread out and entered her blood, flesh, and internal organs. Her vessels were restrained, making her energy circulation stagnant. Break! Feng Rao used her last bit of effort to gather her remaining energy to merge with her sound. She attempted to break Shi Yan's heart, the crucial organ. Does it feel good? Shi Yan grinned, straightening his body to thrust deeper. At the same time, he released space power. Feng Rao's charming noises halted. A big hand gripped her soft hand, which was placed in the hole in Shi Yan's chest. The energy in her hand exploded, giving her a twinge as if it was about to crack open. The energy backfired into her body. Looking at the dark and sinister man harassing her, feeling her private area pounded savagely, Feng Rao's beautiful eyes reflected an extreme fear. However, she was restrained to the point that she couldn't even scream. You court death yourself. Don't blame me. Shi Yan sneered, continuing his invasion of her body without showing any bit of mercy. His strong hands pinned her hands on the rock. He was using the crudest method to occupy her forcefully. I'll risk my life to fight you. As she had the third sky of King God Realm Cultivation Base, Feng Rao screamed with hostility and broke the space barrier. Her small hand slid out like a slithering snake. Her sharp fingernails dug into Shi Yan's flesh. She seemed to be going crazy, biting Shi Yan's shoulder and trying to resist with her best efforts. The god body of a third sky, King God Realm Warrior wasn't ordinary. Shi Yan's body couldn't resist as she dug a lot of bleeding holes on his back. Feels so good, Shi Yan shouted. He didn't stop his movement. Shi Yan was cruel enough to pound his steel-like fists on Feng Rao's tummy. Feng Rao screamed wildly. These two were biting and tearing each other apart while maintaining their central position like the two enraged beasts. The rock they were laying on couldn't stand anymore, breaking into pieces. They fell to the ground, but still engaged in their battle. Energies impacted. Flesh pounded on flesh. This scene was both sensual and bloody at the same time. Although Shi Yan was stabbed and bleeding, he had never experienced such pleasure before. His shaft felt so good thrusting in and out of a moist and narrow place. Even though he was invading the woman under his body brutally, he also hit her without showing any mercy. His punches fell like a shower on Feng Rao's stomach, making her cry loudly and squeeze off his flesh further. Shi Yan's god body had more deep-to-the-bone wounds. In the cold and dark outer space, on a massive meteorite, these two were like two mad mating animals rolling around. Wherever they passed by, rocks exploded. Everything was crushed. Feng Rao had been hurt badly. The sensitive area between her legs fell under the savage attack. Her stomach hit multiple times. Gradually, she couldn't stand it anymore. Her grip on Shi Yan's body loosened. Feng Rao's beautiful eyes reflected her sorrowful grief. Looking at the man who was taking her body with deep hatred, she blushed unnaturally, panting. She hated that she couldn't kill herself at this place. This is the harassment she had thought would never happen to her. Countless thugs and space pirates in the land of God punishment didn't dare look at her in the eyes. And today, on this cold, barren meteorite, she was pushed on the ground and fell into the nightmare she had never wanted to see. Eventually, Feng Rao felt so weak that she couldn't perform a counterattack. Tears rolled from the corners of her eyes. She closed her eyes desperately as if she knew she would never escape this fatal end. Shi Yan's eyes were still cold and harsh. Seeing her crying, he stopped thrusting, snorted, and studied her face. However, he didn't dare relax. The essence chi of Ganji and Pangjia the two experts of the third sky of King God realm, had been filtered and refined at this moment. The negative feelings were released, making him brutally thrust into her body without mercy or hesitation. His acupuncture points were refining the energy massively. The mysterious black hole that had swallowed Ganji's soul altar was spinning slowly. The energy that could nurture the soul altar oozed out from that section, blending into a sea of consciousness his powers Upanishad tier, Heaven Flames tier, and his God Soul tier. That strange energy seemed to be able to wash the soul altar. The Heaven Flames were bouncing excitedly as if they had just gotten something marvelous. The seal of Upanishads in his God Soul became transparent, which made his understanding of space, star, and death and life become more profound. At the same time, the mysterious energy gushing out from his acupuncture point started to heal the wounds on his body under the control of his immortal martial spirit. A part of it shifted to fill the essence Qi ancient tree. The harvest of this battle was beyond his imagination as his realm and cultivation base were both enhanced. The power that could swallow the soul altar was the most frightening mystery. Although he didn't understand the reason, he knew it was the most malignant power of this world. It was beyond anybody's imagination. He had a premonition that the power of swallowing soul altars was the biggest secret of the blood vein ring. Nurturing the soul altar to purify the seal of Upanishads wasn't something the experts, like Du Tianji, could believe. Sure, Yin suddenly realized the wonderful powers added to his body. If he couldn't become the sole overlord of a region in the raging flame star area, he would definitely fail the grace the blood vein ring had given him and feel guilty to the owner of the ring. Chapter 802, Babel on the Meteorite. Chapter 802, Babel on the Meteorite. On the isolated meteorite, where rocks were piling up, Yen sat cross-legged on the hard and cold ground. He closed his eyes to adjust his power. He had only a dark blue cloak on his naked body. Not far from him, on a round, icy rock, lay Feng Rao under the same colored cloak. Her snow-white arms extended out under the garment. Apparently, she had fainted and now was sleeping. An ice rock froze her and the round rock she was laying on. This ice was 5 meters thick. A faint white cold mist arose. Extreme cold air permeated everywhere. This was the ice-cold flame's work. Since Feng Rao had the third sky of King God Realm cultivation base, even if Yen had hurt her badly, she still had the power to resist. He begrudgingly had to use the cold energy of the ice-cold flame to seal her. Otherwise, when she woke up, she would wreak havoc everywhere. When that happened, it would be too much trouble to deal with her. The thick, transparent ice was confining her jade-while ample body. It looked like the ice was a perfectly cut white crystal, and she was the fossil trapped in this crystal, which gave her a strange and unique aesthetic. Sure, Yin closed his eyes while circulating energy to adjust his body's conditions. The soul altar slowly spun. After an unknown period, flows of mysterious energy were pumped all over his body, turning into the essence Qi in his bones and flesh and healing his entire body. After breaking through to the King God realm and condensing the God body, Yen knew that there was no limit to the God body. If he was persistent, he could continue making his God body stronger and tougher. Under the nurture of that mysterious energy, a faint blood-like halo was covering his God body. It was somehow similar to the light the blood vein ring used to release. From a distance, he looked inexplicably mysterious. His vessels and bones became sponges that absorbed a large part of the mysterious energy, which made his God body more frighteningly tenacious. At the same time, the spinning soul altar seemed to have some subtle changes. The mysterious energy oozing out from the black hole diverged into different flows, flowing into different sections of his soul altar. His sea of consciousness became larger under the support of that energy. Each flow of his soul consciousness now was as hard as steel and as flexible as cotton. After quenching countless times, they could now be released or retrieved at will. While the soul altar was revolving, the seals of Upanishad on the top tier became crystal clear. Sher Yan's perception of the three powers Upanishad had made him advance one level further. In his heaven flame altar, the heaven flames were dancing strangely as they were trying their best to draw the flooding energy and merge with it. This would make their intelligence better and their life forms would be sublimated. The great benefit that energy brought to the soul altar had surprised Sher Yan much. All the heaven flames sent messages to him, telling him they all got great benefits from that energy. The 9 serenities soul devouring flame, the ice-cold flame, and the corpse vanishing flame went dormant. They were about to ascend to another level. This event had startled Sher Yan. He now had a crazy satisfaction having that black hole which could swallow the soul altar. A power Upanishad that could swallow the soul altar, let alone Feng Rao. Even Sher Yan had never heard about it before, but now it happened to his body. How could he not be happy? After his 3 heaven flames got great benefits, they were about to break through to another level. This means the energy came out from that black hole could create miracles. Sher Yan could not be more joyful. He adjusted his conditions and aura quietly. After an unknown period, he opened his eyes, bright as stars. He had wasted a lot of mental power and energy in this battle. Ultimately, he wasn't disappointed. Indeed, he received a huge harvest. Not only had he restored the consumed energy, he also made another step advancing. The essence tree, ancient tree, was filled with transparent energy. His soul altar was cleaned. His god soul became crystal clear. Vaguely, Sher Yan could feel that he was just one step away from the second sky of King God Realm. It seemed that if he could have a new level of perception of powers Upanishad, he could break through easily to the second sky of King God Realm. His cultivating speed was something countless experts in the raging Flamestar area didn't even think about dreaming of. If Leona, Ziyao, Karthu, and the others knew that he had entered the second sky of King God Realm from his first sky of King God Realm, he wondered how scared they would be. Looking at the purgatory star in a far distance, Sher Yan's eyes got colder, couldn't help but sneer. He still remembered his boastful talk of taking the head on Ao Guduo's neck and killing Ao Gera. He must make this pair of uncle and nephew pay a big, pathetic price. Ao Guduo and Ao Gera had used him as a sacrificial pawn to harm Leona, which had almost assigned him to eternal damnation. On the purgatory star, Ao Guduo wanted to kill him without listening to his explanation. Without Leona, he would have had no chance to enter the extreme purgatory field. He would not forget his resent towards Ao Guduo easily. 100 years was nothing significant to the other warriors, as they couldn't even break through a major realm. However, it would be plenty time for Sher Yan to use 100 years. Perhaps he could continue breaking the barriers to reach the original God realm. With his potential and deeds, if he could enter the original God realm, killing Ao Guduo wasn't just a joke. It was a possibility, though. Getting up, he walked to Feng Rao. Sher Yan frowned, assessing the woman as he was considering something with cold eyes. After a while, he snorted, placing his left hand on the crystal ice. The flaming energy of the sun was urged. Scarlet halos rippled from his palm, covering the thick ice. Under his scrutinizing look, the icy cold energy that created the thick ice rock melted. Water dropped into a stream, flowing from the rock under Feng Rao's body. As the ice covered her wonderfully beautiful body, her thin eyebrows slammed together. Sher Yan cracked a smile as his eyes wandered on her interesting curves. He wore a strange smile on his face. A warm current flowed out of his palm, disappearing into Feng Rao's lower abdomen. It was the life energy of the death and life power Upanishad which contained the robust vitality. it could magically foster lives. As that warm current entered Feng Rao's lower abdomen, Feng Rao exhaled in relief. Her knitted eyebrows relaxed, signaling how she felt comfortable. She couldn't help but circulate that warm current, moving one round in her meridians. Gradually, Feng Rao felt like she was soaking in a warm lake. The fatigue she had washed away. Her spirit became sound. Shortly after, she batted her long eyelashes and opened her eyes. Shi Yan's persistent and harsh face appeared clearly in her eyes at the very first moment. The humiliating memories flooded her instantly. Feng Rao woke up immediately from her hazy condition. A cold, murderous intention flashed across her exquisite face. Her ashen lips parted to shout, "Die!" Boom! The word "die" had stirred up the remnant of her energy. Just like a landslide, she aimed the man within her reach. "Confine!" Sure, Yen didn't even bat an eye. He shouted inwardly, and his space power immediately confined the section in front of him. The sound of the word "die" dashed forward, stimulating the area in front of Shi Yan. Waves of soul power appeared as if something sharp was trying to pierce through them. However, this strange sound couldn't do anything, and the energy it carried vanished. Squinted, Shi Yan rose his hand to grab Feng Rao's smooth neck. He cocked his head and looked at her, sneering. "Still want to kill me? Seems you haven't recognized your situation well enough." Feng Rao's eyes were sinister as she gazed at him as though she wanted to wolf him alive. "Haha, even if we participate in intercourse, you women are all the same. You hate and stay unreasonable. I like it." Shi Yan burst out laughing, but his eyes were cold and heartless. His big hand, clutching Feng Rao's neck, loosened a bit. "Shameless!" Feng Rao wiggled and shouted ear-piercingly. While she was struggling, her snow-white arms had unintentionally dragged her cloak slip away. Her beautiful body was exposed instantly. The azure tattoos were moving on her white body, which dazed people. Shi Yan snorted, and his mocking eyes lingered on her two ample heights. He appraised, "You do have good assets. This body, this bosom, haha, really, really big." Feng Rao felt humiliated, clenching her teeth. There was also blood on her lips. She stared at him with extreme hatred that she couldn't eat him alive. "I didn't tease you initially. You guys ambushed me first. You wanted to kill me. I just defended myself." Shi Yan beamed a faint smile. He suddenly retracted his arm and stopped troubling her. He conveniently took the cloak to cover her naked body. "Don't enrage me. With your condition, you can kill me only in your dream. You don't have even 20% of your power now. You're no match for me. If you take risks, you will face death." Feng Rao gazed at his back. She pondered for seconds, then took out a new leather robe from her fantasy sky ring. She put on her cloth, then took some medicines. During the whole process, she didn't whine or groan once. Shi Yan suddenly turned his head, his face indifferent. He gazed at her for a while and said calmly, "With your current conditions, if you want to fully restore your power, it will take at least 2 weeks or maybe 10 days. But you're wounded severely. The recovery time will be slower. Yeah, in other words, at least you won't be my opponent within this 1 month. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you this. Even if you return to your best conditions, you can't kill me. At most, you can leave intact." "What gives you such confidence?" Feng Rao contemplated for a while, then stooped, concealing her countenance. "Did you think that you had the power of the peak of King God realm warriors when you killed Ganji and Pangjia stealthily? If Pangjia and Ganji hadn't consumed a lot of energy and wounded each other, you wouldn't have had a chance." "Of course, it's not that easy." Shi Yan didn't bother with that and just smiled. "I planned to ambush you guys because you were 3 and I was 1. If it were just one of you, it wouldn't be that difficult." Feng Rao lifted her head up, her beautiful eyes extremely cold and sinister. Do you really think that your power is enough to resist a third sky of King God Realm Warrior? I do, Shi Yen nodded seriously. Then he said, Unfortunately, I won't give you a chance to taste it. Don't even think about provoking me. What do you want? Feng Rao gritted her teeth, cursing him shameless bastard. You know nothing about the star map. Why did you poke your nose into this? Which force do you belong to? Did Du Tianji assign you? Shi Yen was surprised. Du Tianji assigned me my ass. Jianggu had trapped me. He made me involved in this mess. If the three of you hadn't set me up, I wouldn't have had to risk my life. And now you hate me for that? Ridiculous. Pausing for a while, Shi Yen suddenly beamed a smile. Anyway, although it was wrong, it's all good now. I got in there, and the star map is in my hands now. Of course, I haven't forgotten my plan. Yeah, tell me the secret of the star map. If you are going to be honest, we can exchange it for your life. Chapter 803, A Pivotal Treasure. Chapter 803, A Pivotal Treasure. Feng Rao looked at Shi Yen boasting. Her gloomy eyes became begrudgingly bitter. If she could restore her power to the peak of her realm, she wouldn't hesitate to kill Shi Yen and take the star map. However, Shi Yen didn't act with common sense. From time to time, he would take unpredictable and unexpected actions, formulating surprising plans. This brute wasn't someone easy to deal with. She understood that he kept her alive not because of her glamour, but because of the secrets he wanted to know from her. The moment he found the secret behind the star map was when she would finally meet her demise. Once her powers were restored to the point that she could threaten Shi Yen, he would lose his mercy. He would wound her severely again and make her never be able to recover. She understood how he thought. However, she had no solution in this harsh situation. If you give me the star map, I won't hold you accountable for what you've done to me. I'm sure I can grant you much more wealth and status than what you could have in the dark firmament divine nation. How does that sound? Feng Rao contemplated for a while, thinking that Shi Yen wouldn't be content being subdued by the dark firmament divine nation. She offered him greater benefits in the hope that he would consider it. Well, since you want the star map so much, I won't give it to you. Shi Yen grinned, teasing her. Once you recover, you won't let me be free. It is easy to tell your true motive. How could he not see the cold and sinister resentment in Feng Rao's eyes? If he let Feng Rao recover fully, how would he suppress this woman? What do you want then? Feng Rao was infuriated. You've taken everything I've worked for, and you know nothing about the star map. You don't have a good background force, either. What can you do with the star map? While squinting, Shi Yen smiled for the second time. I've just come to this raging flame star area. I don't know much, but because this place is unfamiliar territory, I am bounded by nothing. I have no family to be a hostage for. No one can force me to do anything. Yeah, you have the third sky of King God Realm Cultivation Base. If I kill you and take your soul memories, I won't need to waste a lot of time. Usually, only the warriors at a relatively high realm could confine the other people's god soul and snatch its memories. Such warriors could know its thoughts and experiences. In other words, unless he reached the original god realm, it would be hard to kill Feng Rao and take what he wants from her god soul. However, if Feng Rao killed herself and exploded her god soul before he could do anything, even if he had the original god realm cultivation base, he would end up with nothing gained. Thus, after killing Pangjia and Ganji, he kept her alive. While talking, Shi Yan's visage became colder, walking to Feng Rao. He looked at her indifferently. Perhaps torture will work. Who do you work for? Feng Rao's beautiful eyes sparkled in fright. Why does a person who knows nothing like you want to involve yourself in this? Did you know that Pangjia and Ganji were members of the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce and the Underworld League? I have a huge force that stands behind me too. If you aren't working for Du Tianji, I advise you not to stay involved in this. Get away from here as far as possible. Even if you have the star map, you can't do anything without a supporting force. Shi Yan's eyes brightened. He looked struck. So, according to you, the star map secrets are more important than I thought. It made the 9-star Chamber of Commerce and the Underworld League wait for hundreds of years. What is the secret? Who are you? Which is the force behind you? Have you ever heard about Feng Ke? Feng Rao's bold brows knitted together. She pondered for a while before saying quietly, Feng Ke of the land of God punishment? The leader of the outer space pirates? Shi Yan was shaken. He paled slightly. After he had talked to Bloody Slaughter Ka Tua, he paid attention to space pirates. He used to read about the land of God punishment. In the Raging Flame Star area, the strongest forces were, of course, the Dark Firmament Divine Nation, the Underworld League, and the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. However, besides these three forces, other powerful forces lived in Raging Flame Star area. Feng Ke was one of them, and he was the one they had to pay the most attention to. The outer space pirates were loosely organized. They hid in dangerous areas of the Raging Flame Star area. Space pirates gathered the most in the land of God punishment, which was also a powerful force that held lots of influence. The land of God punishment was a unique area with fatal, unseen dangers. There was no life star suitable for warriors to cultivate. Besides the Dark Firmament Divine Nation, the Underworld League, and the 9-star Chamber of Commerce, that place could be the cradle of the 4th strongest force of the Raging Flame Star area. Countless space pirates created a loose organization to resist the pursuit and attack from the other 3 big forces. Feng Ke was the strongest force among the pirates. He gradually became their leader. The land of God punishment was the refuge of countless robbers, thieves, villains, and madmen. It was packed with reckless experts. Feng Ke was the hidden boss of the land of God punishment. Many transactions happened there under his supervision and management. Feng Ke himself was the number 1 or number 2 expert of the entire Raging Flame Star area at the second sky of original God Realm. His power was marvelous, and so was his force, which consisted of savage members. Compared to Feng Ke, Bloody Slaughter Ka was a pirate who was not worth mentioning. In many businesses, he relied on Feng Ke. This man was prominently braver and smarter than the others. He was infamous for his brutal and merciless deeds. If that area weren't restricted, and the other 3 forces hadn't cleaned it up from time to time, perhaps Feng Ke's force could have been able to compare with the Dark Firmament Divine Nation, the Underworld League, and the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. This man had abilities and a huge force that supported him and obeyed his commands. He was almost the same as Du Tianji, the evil overlord of a vast region. Of course I have. Shi Yan was astounded. His face darkened. Is he related to you? He's my father. Feng Rao chinned up, snorting arrogantly. My reputation isn't less than him in the land of God punishment. Because of the star map, I had to enter the extreme purgatory field. Shi Yan was startled. He hesitated for a while before rubbing his forehead. Your father's fame isn't bad. He's an overlord of a whole region in the Raging Flame Star area. But why does he want the star map? Well, I forgot to tell you that I've used my secret technique to report to my father. No matter what happens to me, if you dare show your face in the Raging Flame Star area, my father won't spare your life, threatened Feng Rao. You've messed with the wrong person. My bad. Shi Yan got up and bowed while smiling. I have not treated the pearl of the land of God punishments, Overlord, carefully enough. I even harassed you, too. I feel uneasy now. You dare say such words? Feng Rao was enraged. She could see in Shi Yan's eyes that only showed her mocking intentions. Thinking about what she had experienced, she couldn't press down the anger in her heart. She was infuriated. Although your father's mighty, the raging flame star area is large enough. How would he find me? Shi Yin grinned and stiffened his face. Moreover, he isn't the absolute force in the raging flame star area. If he dares show himself in the dark firmament divine nation, I don't need to do anything. The 5 great feudal vassals will contain him forever. Feng Rao's threat couldn't bind him at all, as long as he didn't go to the land of God punishment. Feng Ke's territory. What should he be afraid of? But the map shows the direction of the land of God punishment, Feng Rao sneered. The direction you were fleeing towards was also towards that place. It proves that our presumption is correct. My father knows you have the star map now. He also knows that you will have to go near the land of God punishment. Do you think you will stay alive if you decide to go find the spot on that map? Even if you can find it, what can you do here? Can you hide the life star away? Can you move the part of the land that we haven't investigated yet? Sure, Yen discolored in fright. His eyes sparkled with a strange light that was like 2 silky ribbons. He couldn't help but shout, "What did you just say?" A life star? An unexploited star area? Indeed, you know nothing. Feng Rao laughed, ridiculing Shi Yin. Your stupidity makes me laugh. You know nothing, but you want to be a part of this. Do you wish to experience death? Taking a deep breath, Shi Yin wasn't enraged, his face solemn. Can you elaborate? Feng Rao looked at him for a while, weighing the pros and cons of telling him. She decided to tell him. It can be concealed for a long time. 5 former imperial masters of the dark firmament divine nation used to work around the land of God punishment. They found a secret passage leading to another star area near the land of God punishment. I heard that this star area isn't vast. It has around 10 life stars, including a level 7 star and several big mineral stars. They hide enormous divine crystal mines and more strange crystals. They even have spiritual grass and plants that we directly use. The place contains items that warriors have dreamed of. However, that star area doesn't have any guards or living creatures. Paused for a while, Feng Rao continued. People have come there to explore. The 3 forces and the outer space pirates have tried too, but they achieved nothing. However, rumors say that the imperial master of the dark firmament divine nation went there before. They also made a star map. We can't verify these rumors. However, I believe it now. Once the news spreads out, many people will believe it. They will become crazy from knowing it. Sure, Yin trembled hard. Around 10 life stars and even the level 7 one. Divine crystal mines, countless herbs, and spiritual grass. These were enough to make the 3 forces crazy. Although the raging flame star area had many life stars, none of them were level 7. Shi Yin heard that the dark firmament star of the dark firmament divine nation was just between level 5 and 6. A level 7 life star could nurture countless precious natural products. Earth and heaven energy would be abundant, and it could even be materialized. The energy could turn into visible mist, which brought unimaginable benefits to warriors. The life stars itself would make any forces crazy for them, let alone the additional divine crystal mines and spiritual herbs. Who wouldn't be excited from hearing about those? Shi Yin had put forth everything in the raging flame star area and been dependent on Ziyao and the dark firmament divine nation to find a life star to act as the shelter for his family and friends in the Grace mainland. Even if he could have a level 2 life star, he would be satisfied. However, Feng Rao had just thrown him information like a heavy grenade out of the blue. How could he stop himself from shaking excitedly? Finally, he understood why Ganji, Pangjia, and Feng Rao had been secluding several hundred years to have a chance to grab that star map. Chapter 804, A Little Mercy. Chapter 804, A Little Mercy. After Feng Rao finished speaking, Shi Yin pondered for a long time. A new star area that people haven't exploited. This news shook Shi Yin hard. He was so thrilled that he shivered. He left the Grace mainland to find an exit for his family and friends. A life star could fulfill his wish. He used to think that this wish of his would take a long time to accomplish. But now, the secrets of the star map that Feng Rao had shared with him had given him a new train of thought. Around 10 life stars and even a level 7 one. Divine crystal mines, countless herbs, and spiritual grass. Any force of the raging flame star area that claimed this new star area could receive a massive resource. Whether it was the dark firmament divine nation, the Underworld League, or the 9-star Chamber of Commerce, whoever gained control of the new star area could suppress the other two. Within a couple of 100 years, it could become the ultimate overlord of the raging flame star area. Having no real land to base was the reason why Feng Ku and the space pirates were weaker than the dark firmament divine nation, the Underworld League, and the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. There was no life star with earth and heaven energy around the land of God punishment and where the dangers were arranged in layers. This place gathered villains and escapees who had no place to hide. If Feng Ku could claim the new star area, he would become a new powerful force of the raging flame star area that would be able to compete with the other 3 forces. If Shi Yan could get the new star area, not only he could solve the problem of the Grace mainland, he would also have the power to lay his eyes on the strongest forces of the raging flame star area. At that time, even though the owner of the dark firmament divine nation was Du Tianji, even the Underworld League and the 9-star Chamber of Commerce found it hard to bind him. When he could have time to grow, he could also become an overlord of a region in the raging flame star area. Shi Yan was thrilled listening to the secrets that Feng Rao disclosed. However, he couldn't explore a new star area alone. Since the area stayed between the land of God punishment and the 9-star Chamber of Commerce, it wasn't going to be easy to approach. Excellent. Thank you for sharing the information. Contemplating for a while, Shi Yan stood up with a cold visage. He lifted his head to look at the immense starry sea in front of him. The flame of lofty aspiration emanated inside him. I will claim that new star area at any cost. Even if you can find that place, what you can do. Feng Rao looked at him mockingly. You only? A first sky of king god realm warrior? Under the scrutinizing looks from the crowd of experts. Are you sure you can grab it? I can't at the moment, but it doesn't mean that I won't be able to do such a thing in the future. Shi Yan grinned, not bothered by her ridicule. I'm still young. I still have time to do this. Just as you said, the star area over there has many people keeping an eye on it. No one can get in now. I got the star map. As soon as I've accumulate enough power with this star map, what would be impossible for me to accomplish? Accumulate energy? Is it that easy? Feng Rao snorted. There are many warriors at the King God realm in the raging flame star area, and warriors at the original God realm aren't rare. You've just entered the threshold, boy. Do you think that they are all fools who you can influence? Haha, what do you mean? Shi Yan smiled, staring at her. In fact, we can cooperate, Feng Rao stooped. However, she understood that she had to persuade Shi Yan to get access to the star area before the other 3 forces. Cooperate? How? Shi Yan smiled, walking toward Feng Rao. He could smell the fragrance that could be absorbed by people's hearts from her body. His hot eyes lingered on her white neck. He didn't want to hide the desire in his mind. You're Feng Ku's daughter. Haha, we've had intimate time with each other. Do you want to entice and recruit me? Feng Rao lifted up her head. Her beautiful eyes sparkled a dark light. Her look locked his without being afraid. My father's an overlord of an entire region. I have the 3rd sky of King God realm cultivation base. And you're just a warrior who doesn't have a clear origin. Am I not a suitable match for you? Shi Yan laughed evilly with some dark meanings, extending his rough hand to stroke her soft neck. He didn't bother with her rage and simply smiled. I can't reach that height. Feng Rao was infuriated. She shot up, shouting with a cold countenance. I know you won't let me off. Kill me. Don't be mad. I don't want to deny you. Shi Yan laughed shamelessly. You are so beautiful and mesmerizing. How could I kill you? I just can't figure it out yet. We have to go there anyway. Give me more time to think, okay? While he was talking, his big hand slid down, falling on the white hill under her garment. However, his eyes were bright and clear. She saw no lust in there. Get your dirty hand off of me. Feng Rao's jade-like hand shot out a light that bloomed into a small vortex, wiping Shi Yan's hand away. She flew 100 meters backward, looking at him cautiously. If you dare touch me again, I won't let this slip away. Even if I have to blow my soul altar off, I won't let you bully me. Why do you need to be so heartless? You know, one day we could be husband and wife. We were so close, you know. I'm a sentimental person. If you talk to me nicely, add a honey here and there, you know, perhaps I will follow you. Shi Yan felt funny. Stop your sweet talk. A heartless man, like you will never be bound by women. Am I correct? Feng Rao snorted. Shi Yan gazed at her, his face indifferently. He didn't explain anything, just said, We've been there for a long time. We should go. If the chasers of the divine nation come here, we're both in big trouble. Feng Rao didn't answer, still looking at him with hostility. The resentment in her heart remained. There was nothing to clean here. Shi Yan navigated the correct direction before flying out of the meteorite. He turned his head to signal Feng Rao to follow him, heading to the place of the land of God punishment and the 9-star chamber of commerce. Time flies fast. Half a month passed. Shi Yan and Feng Rao had soon left the territory of the dark firmament divine nation, approaching the peripheral area of the 9-star chamber of commerce. They had passed by some life stars, where some small forces of the raging flame star area dwelled. They were the subordinates of the 9-star chamber of commerce. The two of them were afraid of raising the attention from the 3 forces. While traveling, they tried their best to travel through the remote areas. They didn't dare come close to any life star. They had flown like that for a long time. However, the distance to the land of God punishment and the 9-star chamber of commerce was still pretty far. While moving, Shi Yan had confined Feng Rao's power, not letting her restore fully because that would have created a potential threat towards him. On this travel, Feng Rao gradually accepted her destiny. She knew that careful men like Shi Yan would never give her a chance. Thus, she stopped to use the medicines and pellets anymore, because every time she restored her power a little bit, Shi Yan would use his vitality destructive attack to draw her life energy. If she didn't become a threat to him, he wouldn't attack her. Along this journey, Shi Yan often asked Feng Rao about the situation of the land of God punishment. The more he knew about this place, the more terrified he became. He became afraid of the land of God punishment and the outer space pirates that stayed around the land. The space pirates had 10 organizations, and bloody slaughter Katua was just one of those. In the place that gathered thugs, villains, and madmen, Katua and his pirates were just a second-class force. Besides, there were 3 more experts at the original God realm, like Feng Ku. However, they had just reached the first sky of original God realm. Their competences and forces weren't as strong as Feng Ku's. Anyway, those 3 were much stronger than bloody slaughter Katua. They were the intimidating thugs that the 3 forces rejected to accommodate. They had countless lunatics as their henchmen. That area was chaotic. The strongest would be crowned the king. Murders, plunders, arsons, and battles occurred daily. The pirates constantly competed. All had made this place the most disorderly and dangerous place of the entire raging Flamestar area. Incompetent warriors who didn't have the sufficient power to protect themselves would be gnawed to death once coming here, leaving no trace behind. depending only on Shuriyan's power. It wasn't easy to find the location marked on that star map. It was possible for him to be skinned alive before seeing his target. Today, after they got exhausted, the two of them rested on an abandoned mineral star. They thought that they should find a war chariot, using the energy of their bodies to fly, drain them. However, they seemed to deviate from their main direction. Along this way, they saw no battleship or any war chariot of the Chamber of Commerce. The thought of using a chariot instead of walking became hard to turn into a reality. This abandoned mineral star had a small pond with clean and clear water. 5 colored rocks lay in the bottom of the lake, but they seemed useless to warriors. On this trip, Feng Rao was always tired. Every time she was able to condense a little energy, Shuriyan would heartlessly erase it instantly, which enraged her a lot. And she hadn't taken a bath for a long time. Seeing the crystal-clear pond, Feng Rao became excited. She didn't wait for Shuriyan to talk, flying directly into the pond. She stayed in the water and cleaned the dirt on her body. Shuriyan lay leisurely on his side on a big rock by the pond. He cocked his head, looking at the water. He beamed a faint smile but didn't leave. "I want to take a bath. Can you be a gentleman and go away?" Feng Rao lifted her head and glared at him. She stooped as if she didn't want to see him at all. "You are controlling my power. I can't do any harm to you shortly. What makes you worried then?" "I'm afraid you will contact your father discreetly." "I should be vigilant," answered Shuriyan indifferently. However, he didn't seem to move an inch. He had soon planted a beam of his soul consciousness with space energy. As long as Feng Rao's soul altar had any strange commotions, he would be informed immediately. He would never give her a chance. Feng Ku was intimidating and brutal. If he let this man locate him and come for him, even if he had had 3 lives, they weren't enough for him to get killed in the other's hands. He concluded that he must stay cautious anyway. Feng Rao was enraged, but she could only grit her teeth. She turned around and took off her clothes. She gradually revealed, little by little, her flawless white back. She slowly sank into the pond, concealing her appealing body. Shuriyan squinted, eyeing her vague, tender body inside the pond. However, his serious and cold face didn't relax either. This woman was cunning and vicious enough. If he gave her a chance to turn around, she would take it and storm over without any hesitation. Shuriyan didn't want to have any chance of some unavoidable trouble. Chapter 805 Bloody Chief Skull Battleship. Chapter 805 Bloody Chief Skull Battleship. Feng Rao had no idea how she could resist Shuriyan. She couldn't make sure Yen didn't leave, so her only option was to hide her body under the water to clean up. Since she hadn't had the chance to touch such clean water for a long time, she didn't want to let this chance slip away. The water in the pond was transparent. Even if she was hiding underwater, Shuriyan would still be able to see the heart-touching white areas of her body. He had a nice view just from staying here. He had touched her body many times. It seemed like Feng Rao had accepted her destiny. She didn't dodge anymore and simply let him watch her clean and wash. Yen was lying on his side of the rock by the pond, his face cold and solemn. Then he chuckled. He jumped into the pond, bathing just a dozen meters from Feng Rao. He looked at the starry sky above his head and relaxed. Feng Rao was startled. She thought that Yen would harass her again. She was on guard. After she confirmed that Yen wasn't planning to harass her, she calmed down her tense nerves. The raging flame star area and the Grace mainland seemed to be infinitely far from each other. They were so far away from each other that even if Yen had used all of his immortal demon blood, he wouldn't be able to sense anything from the other side. Wandering alone in a strange area, it was hard to find a moment to relax. Looking at the sea star that seemed to never end, he couldn't help but feel homesick. It has been dozens of years since he arrived in the Grace mainland. His memories of the other world faded gradually. He had lost his parents, and now, under another starry sky, he once again didn't have a family. At that moment, he was uncontrollably wild. He liked to stretch his limits and seek for pleasure. He didn't have brothers or any close relationships. Also, he didn't have anyone who he wanted to be sincere and kind to. After he had descended to the Grace mainland, he had a new identity of a completely different Shi Yan. From that moment, he had experienced the affections that a family can give. Shi Jian and the Shi family had treated him well, as he was the hope of the family. They had taken care of him. He had dazzling life experiences in the Grace mainland. He felt that his life finally had a meaning, and he had passions that he wanted to pursue. There were many heart-touching moments in this place that he would never forget for the rest of his life. Looking at the starry sky, the images, which were somehow both familiar and strange to him, flashed vividly in his head. A light that appeared in the starry sea above his head. It gradually enlarged. They could vaguely see that it was a battleship, which was prominent among the star dots. It was moving quickly towards them. Shi Yan got up abruptly. He immediately moved towards Feng Rao in the pond, letting out a low shout. A battleship! Feng Rao was startled. She hastened to cover her charming body with another leather robe. She glared at him angrily before lifting her head to look at the sky. After Pang Jia, Handi, and Ganji died, Shi Yan took their jade tokens. A magical life energy reflected in the jade tokens. Shi Yan immediately took one of them out and held it in his hand. He relaxed his mind. Feng Rao reacted shortly. She took out her jade token to conceal her aura. Crack! The firm rock foundation of the pond exploded, revealing a deep cave. Shi Yan didn't say anything, pulling Feng Rao into the cave that was under the pond. He hauled a big rock to seal a large portion of the entrance. His cold and gloomy eyes pierced through the pond water to watch the sky. Since he hid his life energy and his god body, the warriors on that battleship would never be able to sense them unless they had the high sky of original God realm. Who could they possibly be? Shi Yan asked Feng Rao. He frowned. He wasn't familiar with the layout of the Raging Flame Star area. He didn't know which force this area belonged to and who would pass by frequently. Feng Rao knitted her bold brows. Only the battleships of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce travel through this area. Sometimes the space pirates would wait here to rob the 9-star Chamber of Commerce's battleships. Anyway, this area is relatively safe compared to other places. Battles rarely take place here. The cave Shi Yan had made wasn't big. As the two of them squeezed inside this cave, they had to stay close to each other. They could feel the body temperature of the other through their soaked clothes. Feng Rao's face was odd as she unconsciously looked where her hand was touching. She frowned and jolted to stay away from him. Shi Yan found that immediately. He just smiled looking at her. Where on your body haven't I touched you yet? Why are you being so polite to me? Feng Rao hated him deeply in her heart. She clenched her jaw. Resentment sparkled in her eyes as she lowered her voice. I swear, one day, you will pay a big price. It was all right when she said nothing, but after she finished her threat, Shi Yan chuckled evilly and leaned closer to her. Space power appeared which binded her. While she was startled, Shi Yan pulled her to his chest with one hand. Feng Rao fell into his embrace. Shi Yan smiled until his eyes squinted. I told you I'm soft-hearted. If you want me to cooperate with your father, the other tricks won't work. I told you that using your beauty would work. Anyway, we're intimate. Marriage would be enough to have you on my side. Ghosts by it. Feng Rao gritted her teeth. As she wanted to wiggle, she suddenly paled and shouted slightly, Bloody Chief Skull Pirate! They're Russell's men. Be careful. Shi Yan was surprised. He stopped his teasing and faced the sky. His face darkened. The battleship appeared in their sight, slowly. It was 700 or 800 meters long, which was made of some strange gray wood. Blood stained everywhere on the body of this battleship. They could even see some darker spots where blood had dried and stained. Blood-dripping skulls were hung along the body of the ship. They belonged to different races with different sizes. Each skull was hung onto the battleship by a small rope. At first glance, it had several thousand skulls, which intimidated people. An eccentrically beautiful bloody skull flag swayed on the battleship. This flag seemed to have been recently soaked in fresh blood because blood was still dripping from it. Warriors standing on the battleship were watching here and there. All of them looked malicious and brutal. Ferocious light sparkled from their eyes. The bloody chief skull pirate is a mighty force of the land of God punishment. Russell is the boss. He has the first sky of original God realm. He is ranked just behind my father in the land of God punishment, said Feng Rao with a cold visage. Russell is infamous. He likes blood-dripping skulls. After he kills an expert, he would behead him to have the spoils to hang on his battleship. The bloody chief skull battleship is made from the bloody sulfur tree. The tree's material is tougher than any metals. It can conceal the auras of the voyagers. This toy is very fast and tough. Russell, the leader of the bloody chief skull pirates, was one of the space pirates based in the land of God punishment. He had the original God realm cultivation base with brute deeds. In the land of God punishment, he was one of the small numbers of warriors who could fight Feng Ku. This is his territory. Shi Yen frowned. According to you, this place doesn't have many battles taken place, does it? Yeah, battles are rare, but it doesn't mean there will always be nothing. Feng Rao rubbed her head, talking with a headache. Russell and his bloody chief skull pirates won't leave their lair. Usually. I think they have a big operation today, which is why they are coming to this place. I'm sure some battleships that transport materials are about to pass this area. Russell came here to prepare his ambush beforehand. Shi Yen got serious, embracing Feng Rao with both arms while increasing the energy in his body. He was vigilant. Once Feng Rao made strange moves, he would subdue her immediately. Feng Rao's father was Feng Ku, the true devil hero of the land of God punishment. Perhaps he would have a good relationship with Russell. When Russell knew he got Feng Rao and his whereabouts was disclosed, it would be hard to escape. You don't need to be so careful. Feng Rao felt like she got an electric shock. She blushed unnaturally, clenching her jaw. Russell doesn't get along well with my father. Everybody knows that. If he knows you are detaining me, he won't help me, and he would even facilitate you. Shi Yen smiled begrudgingly, but he didn't buy it, still hugging her tight. He whispered in her ear, I don't care about him, just watch now. Feng Rao was enraged, as she knew that he just wanted to harass her. But she was at her wit's end. Cursing herself for falling into this low situation, Feng Rao hastened to gather herself together, forcing her mind to be clear. She talked with rage, let off me first. You see, I think they came here to make a base. Shi Yen didn't care about her words, pointing at the space above their head. This mineral star has been abandoned. Still, it has a lot of mines. They can hide in those mines and not build anything. Seems like Russell is going to have a big business here. I wonder who his poor target is. Of course, it's the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce. I heard that Russell and the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce have a bloody grudge. It's been so many years, and he still wants to grip the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce. I heard that he used to be a member of the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce. However, his family was eradicated and he got people chasing after him. That was why he escaped to the land of God punishment. Seeing that he wasn't going to let her free and with no way of getting out, she explained through her gritted teeth. The 9-Star Chamber of Commerce wants to kill him. It's been years. If the land of God punishment didn't have so many dangerous places to hide, Russell would have died already. However, Now that Russell has reached the original God realm, he has the capacity to resist the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. Lately, he's become the mad dog that keeps gazing at the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. I think it's not an exception this time, either. Haha, I feel like I have more eyes having you here. It will be much easier traveling in the land of God punishment with you, then. Shi Yan smiled. His big mouth caressed Feng Rao's earlobe. Feng Rao jolted as if she got an electric shock. Her plump body shivered uncontrollably. Her white skin reddened. Shi Yan just smiled. Behind Feng Rao's neck, his eyes were as calm and cold as usual. He didn't actually want to do anything with her. Shi Yan decided to conquer this woman and make her follow him willingly. She would become one of his hands to help him claim the New Star area. Chapter 806 Empty Fantasy Crystal. Chapter 806 Empty Fantasy Crystal. The bloody Chief Skull pirates slowly approached the abandoned mineral star. Soon, a massive battleship landed on the star. This mineral star had countless caverns running all the way to the ground. Some caverns were big enough to contain 10 massive Bloody Chief Skull battleships effortlessly. The Bloody Chief Skull battleship landed in a gloomy cavern that was so dark that they couldn't see the bottom. Russell's pirates gathered rocks around to cover the Bloody Chief Skull battleship. This would prevent people from seeing it from an aerial view. The wooden material used to build this battleship was unique as it could conceal life auras. The pirates just needed to stay on their ship. Within a certain distance, the other warriors wouldn't be able to use the soul consciousness to detect them. Russell apparently had a detailed plan. Hide the battleship on the mineral star with all of his pirates staying inside the ship, so they wouldn't be discovered by experts and battleships passing by this area, which could create an effective opportunity for ambush. Shi Yan and Feng Rao stayed in the hole under the pond, seeing the Bloody Chief Skull pirates arrange everything. They didn't dare leave their shelter, but continued watching. Seems like we need to find a place to shelter. Shi Yan had let Feng Rao go a long time ago. He frowned, contemplated before continuing. This mineral star has only one pond, which is the one we're hiding in. I can't guarantee that they won't come here for water or shower. We should move deeper underground. Feng Rao nodded in agreement with his decision. Crack, crack, crack. The cave where they were expanded under Shi Yan's power. Shortly after, the cave was enlarged a dozen times. However, the entrance was still small and stayed sealed by small rocks. If the pirates came and didn't check it carefully, they wouldn't find this place. Staying in the extended cave, Shi Yan was sitting 5 meters away from Feng Rao. They sat cross-legged, facing each other. Why do you want to stay here? Feng Rao was surprised and couldn't understand his intentions. You don't have a relationship with the Bloody Chief Skull pirates or the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. Are you sure you want to interfere their business? Shaking his head, Shi Yan explained. I don't want to poke my nose in this. However, this mineral star now has so many eyes and ears to watch Russell. If we stay here and use the jade token to hide our auras, they won't find us. However, if you are persistent and want to leave once you enter the atmosphere, I'm not sure that they won't see you. Pausing for a while, he frowned and said, You said that Russell has the first sky of Original God Realm and that some of his troops have reached the third sky of King God Realm. If he finds us, it won't be easy for us to escape this star area alive. Feng Rao also nodded seriously. It's true. It won't be easy. Russell isn't a nice guy. Perhaps he knows why I came to the Purgatory Star. If he knew about my whereabouts, perhaps he would come to the conclusion that I have the star map. Then he would definitely not let us go. For the time being, we'll stay here. We don't care about what they do or will do. We shouldn't pay attention to them either. Yeah, wait until they're done with their business. Afterward, they will leave for sure. I doubt they would stay in an abandoned mineral planet for a long time. Shi Yan pondered before expressing his opinions. Feng Rao contemplated for a while. She thought that they couldn't do anything further than that, so she didn't talk more. Time flies hurriedly. 10 days had gone, just like a blink of an eye. Feng Rao and Shi Yan had always secluded in the cave under the pond. They hadn't gone out once. Sometimes they would peer through the water to see the sky and find nothing. Most of the time, they didn't talk to each other. Each of them closed their eyes and meditated. 10 days were short. It was so short that Shi Yan had just sunk into his star power Upanishad, and he hadn't had time to perceive anything yet. After he had reached the king god realm, the progression of his 3 powers slowed down. However, accumulating energy wasn't something hard to him, as he just needed to kill people and use his acupuncture points to filter and refine the energy to supply and maintain peak status. Sure, Yen didn't need to worry about energy sources. Only if his powers, Upanishad, could upgrade, then they could help him break through to a higher realm. The battle at the other meteorite, where he killed Pangjia and swallowed Ganji's soul, Alter had helped his god soul, making the seals of Upanishad crystal clear. He could see the sign of the bottleneck. Shi Yan wanted to seize all chances to strengthen his powers Upanishad, which would be his door to the new realm. This time he didn't restrain Feng Rao. After 10 days, Feng Rao had restored 30% of her full energy. Now she had half of the strength she would have had in her peak condition. Usually at this moment, Shi Yan would do something to reduce her energy, dragging her competence down to 20% or 30%, which ensured that she wouldn't become a threat to him. Feng Rao understood him well. After 10 days had passed, she woke up and opened her bright eyes, watching him in silence as if she was waiting for him to attack her. Opening his eyes, Shi Yan smiled brightly, talking deliberately. Our situation is a bit different now. I won't restrain you this time. Yeah, you can restore half of your powers. If something unexpected happens, you can defend yourself. Feng Rao quietly exhaled in relief. She put on a faint smile. Seems that you're not as vicious as I thought. If you attack me in this given circumstance, you would truly be an asshole. Smiling, Shi Yan didn't care about her ridicule. You're Feng Ke's daughter. I want to ask something. Besides you, how many children does your father has? I have 2 brothers, Feng Rao frowned, contemplating for a while before explaining, from different mothers. Shi Yan smiled. Does your father love you? In his eyes, who is more important? Feng Rao put on a cold visage, snorted but didn't answer. I understand, Shi Yan nodded. If you are more important than your 2 brothers, you wouldn't have to go to the extreme purgatory field. No wonder. In the raging flame star area, daughters aren't more favored than the sons. Feng Rao was enraged, her face cold. What is it that you truly wish to say? I want to say that even if you can return to the land of God punishment, it would be impossible for you to inherit your father's forces one day. Perhaps your 2 brothers will kill you. It would be better to follow me then, said Shi Yan with his thick-skinned face. Follow you? Feng Rao was surprised. She immediately panted in anger. What do you have? What are you to me? Me follow you? If you don't have the star map, you have nothing. Just who do you think you are? You're just at the first sky of King God Realm. You can't even defeat me. What can you offer me? Ridiculous. She was a woman with great ambitions. She had planned carefully. Otherwise, she wouldn't have got into the Purgatory Star and stayed there alone for several hundred years. If there was a man who was stronger than her in many aspects, a man who could offer her powers and pleasures, perhaps she would submit herself to him and serve him well with all her heart. However, Shi Yan's powers at this moment weren't excellent. They weren't enough to convince her, but to make her laugh. It is true that I can't offer you anything now, said Shi Yan with a solemn face, but it doesn't mean that it will be the same later. Although this raging flame star area is vast, it can't hold me. Sooner or later, I will surpass everyone else. If you follow me today, you can have all that belongs to me in the future. Well, wait until you can prove that. When you do, come back and talk to me again, snorted Feng Rao disdainfully. Apparently, she wasn't going to give in so easily. Shi Yan smiled and said nothing else. He understood that it wasn't easy to conquer this woman. He had time. He believed that if this woman stayed with him a little longer, she would gradually change her mind. Maybe one day. Although the raging flame star area was vast, Shi Yan didn't have a good background. Even if he wanted to do something, he didn't have the means to do anything. Without subordinates, how could he be an overlord of a region? In his eyes, Feng Rao was cunning and wicked. She had many accomplishments. If he could gain her favors, his beginning would be smoother. Zi Yao was a princess of the dark firmament divine nation. She would absolutely not risk her life for him. Forces of the dark firmament divine nation were still fighting against each other discreetly. If he wanted to ask for Zi Yao's favor without a sufficient force, people would look down on him. A ship is coming. Feng Rao suddenly let out a low shout. She came close to the cave entrance to peer at the sky out there. Her face slightly changed. Shi Yan stopped thinking about the future. Walking to the crack he left open at the cave entrance. Standing next to Feng Rao and taking in the tender aroma of her body, he got distracted, his mind disoriented. He thought that if he could subdue this woman, perhaps his scheme of the new star area would be very convenient. A massive vessel with the 9-star Chamber of Commerce's symbol was moving slowly in the dark sky. It became bigger in their vision as it came closer to the abandoned mineral star. The crest of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. The incomers should be members of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. Since this ship was huge, it was probably carrying a lot of materials. A flow of soul consciousness was released together with space power, making this flow sway between folds of space, stealthily moving toward the battleship. Shi Yan knew that with space power, his beam of soul consciousness would be hard to catch while its sensibility was enhanced. However, his soul consciousness fell into that big ship like a rock sinking into the ocean. It seemed like it was disrupted by an unknown force. Shi Yan couldn't feel anything. Shi Yan's face changed to be more solemn. That ship of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce can distract space power? How is it so dangerous? Never heard about that. Feng Rao shook her head in surprise. There's no battleship in the raging flame star area that can blind space power. It's impossible. When my soul consciousness came close to that big ship, I lost the connection. I found nothing. Shi Yan frowned, talking in a low voice. Your soul consciousness is created by space energy. Feng Rao was a little frightened. Shi Yan nodded. The ship carries something special. Feng Rao contemplated for a while. With her broad knowledge, her eyes suddenly brightened. The empty fantasy crystal. Only the empty fantasy crystal can produce such an effect. Empty fantasy crystal. Yeah, it is the main material used to create fantasy sky rings. It is also the main material to build space formations. It's a dozen times precious than the ethereal crystal. They say that if we utilize the empty fantasy crystal more efficiently, we would be able to create space passages connecting different star areas. Of course, we need the experts who have space energy to use the God Soul to control the formation, explained Feng Rao. Shi Yan's eyes brightened, shaken by this new information. I want it. Chapter 807, Take a Part in. Chapter 807, Take a Part in. The empty fantasy crystal could connect different star areas through the creation of space passages. Nothing else was more useful than this. After he arrived in the raging flame star area, he kept in mind that he had to bring his family and friends from the Grace mainland to this place. In order to fulfill this wish, he had to continue developing his understanding of space power. The empty fantasy crystal was a light that illuminated his soul. Sure, Yin couldn't contain himself anymore. Do you want it? What will you do for me then? Feng Rao beamed a forced smile. The empty fantasy crystal is so precious in the Raging Flame Star area. Even 100 pieces of top-quality divine crystal wouldn't be worth one empty fantasy crystal. If this ship does have that crystal, it will be the most precious material on there. How will you get it? After a slight pause, Feng Rao continued to stir him up. The 9-star Chamber of Commerce is one of the 3 strongest forces. Do you think it will be easy to deal with Russell's forces? There is no need to even mention the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. Russell's bloody chief skull also wants this ship. Do you have a death wish? How dare you think about robbing him? I must have it. Sure, Yin snorted with a cold face. If you want to die, don't drag me with you. I don't care about your disgusting business anymore. Feng Rao shook her head. Since her advice seemed to be in vain, she didn't talk more. Sure, Yen was not concerned about this. He concentrated, looking at the battleship of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce, and tried to plan for this. That battleship approached the abandoned mineral star. It was close enough now to see people walking to and fro on the battleship like a colony of ants. Boom! A significant tremor boomed from the mineral star that sounded like the earth was roaring ear-piercingly. Russell is starting to move. Feng Rao shouted slightly. As she finished talking, war chariots soared into the sky from the caverns in the mineral star, one by one. A strident voice echoed, "Fan Yi, your grandpa is here to take your life." Wild and surging earth energy burst out. Countless mountains exploded on the mineral star, creating a chaotic stream of rocks hurling towards the big ship of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. The biggest rock was as large as a 100-meter-tall mountain, flying with tremendous momentum, harsh and crazy. It's Russell. Feng Rao was frightened. He comes here himself. Who's Fan Yi? Sher Yen asked in a low voice, his face serious. He's Fan Tian's brother. The Fan family is the pillar of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. It's the biggest clan with mighty forces. He is very tough to deal with. Fan Yi has the first sky of the original God Realm. It will be a fierce fight. The 9-star Chamber of Commerce consisted of different families. It was a league of families, and the Fans were the biggest family of them, all the main pillar of the Chamber of Commerce. Fan Tian was the current president of the chamber. His voice held great influence and power. He was a character at the same level as the hegemon of the Underworld League and Du Tianji of the Dark Firmament Divine Nation. There were many experts of the Fan family, as there were clouds. Besides Fan Tian Pa, the dazzling star of the new generation, their previous generations were all excellent experts. Fan Yi was one of the strongest warriors of the previous generation of the Fan family. He was in charge of logistics operation of the chamber. He was also a powerful character in the Raging Flame Star area. Seems like the ship is transporting something that goes beyond monetary value if Fan Yi was escorting it and Russell coming himself to steal it, Feng Rao commented. It's likely that they have the empty fantasy crystal. That is why Fan Yi is escorting it personally. Sher Yen, don't act rashly. Otherwise, you will die unknowingly. Both Russell and Fan Yi were at the first sky of original God Realm. Either of them could kill Sher Yen easily. They also had many King God Realm warriors, including the third sky of King God Realm ones. Joining this battle wasn't a wise move. Sher Yen contemplated for a while. He frowned and then asked suddenly, "Is it easy to get the empty fantasy crystal in the Raging Flame Star area?" Feng Rao was startled. She mused on it before shaking her head. Not easy at all. The empty fantasy crystal is generated in a twisted space of the Underworld League. The production rate is too small to even produce one in 100 years. It's rare even in the auction house of our land of God punishment. If I miss it this time, could I have another opportunity to get the empty fantasy crystal later? Like maybe within 10 years? Feng Rao shook her head. All right then, I know what to do, said Shiryen with resolve. I must take this risk. Even if I may lose my life, the empty fantasy crystal will be worth it. What do you want to do? Feng Rao had a headache. Only the top-grade blacksmith could use the empty fantasy crystal to build the fantasy skyring or the magical space formation to connect spaces. Only the three forces could do that with the main planet. You're just a small warrior. Aren't you overthinking this? She didn't know that Shiryen had arrived in the raging Flamestar area for just 10 years or the burdens he was bearing, so she couldn't understand why he was so persistent. While they were talking, the pirates riding on the war chariots were storming furiously towards the battleship of the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce. Russell's wrath of earth power Upanishad was urged. Pieces of rock and soil fluttered, like a meteor shower that bombarded the big battleship. Instantly, a tricolor halo bloomed from the ship, creating a magical cage covering it entirely. No matter how much they tried, the big ship couldn't endure Russell's power, trembling hard under the heavy rock shelling. Russell, do you have a death wish? A lanky figure appeared on the deck of the ship. We thought it would be okay to forgive you and not eradicate your family. You coward! If you want to rebel against our Fan family, did you think that we wouldn't harm you? That's Fanny! Feng Rao lowered her voice, then explained. Seems like Russell and the Fans have a lot of resentment for each other. No wonder why Russell is like a mad dog that always stares at the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce. If it were me, I would pay any price to take revenge for that grudge until I die, said Shiryen with a cold and harsh face. Boom, boom, boom. Pirates in the chariots urged their energies to attack the big battleship. Numerous beautiful bunches of light bloomed in the dark space. They screamed and shouted as they approached the ship. A handsome, bearded, bulky man with a terrible scar at the corner of his eye flew alone towards the big ship. He faced the sky and laughed like crazy. The Fans didn't kill me that year. That was your biggest mistake. As long as I'm alive, I will continue troubling this family. You will never know peace. Fan Yi, you killed my whole family and replaced my family in the Chamber of Commerce. Today I will get revenge. I will give you what you deserve. This man was Russell, the leader of the Bloody Chief Skull Pirates. He used the Earth Power Upanishad. Once he deployed his god domain, he could control countless meteorites in outer space, shelling the 9-Star Chamber of Commerce's battleship. Shortly after, the tricolor light barrier couldn't endure any longer under the unceasing attack. It shattered. Many pirates in their chariots were waiting for this moment. They landed on the big ship. The fierce battle burst out. Shiryen and Feng Rao didn't hide in the cave anymore. They got to the pond, lifted their heads to watch the furious battle taking place in the clouds. They all gawked. Terrifying energy flew everywhere, flashing in the dark starry sky and exploding like beautiful fireworks. Beams of energy shot out here, and they're like 5-colored meteors. Different god domains appeared on the deck of the ship. For the time being, this ship couldn't endure such furious energies, and it started to split. It looked like it would break in any minute. When different god domains of the King God Realm warriors made contact, energy would burst out fiercely. From where they were standing, Shiryen and Feng Rao could see many peculiar god domains, all of which were terrifying. Russell has ravaged so many materials recently to facilitate his cultivation. I heard that he's about to break through to the second sky of original God Realm. This man is so ruthless. He also bears grudges in his heart forever. His experience is varied. Fan, ye cannot match him as his opponent. Feng Rao lowered her voice. Then this will be the best. Shi Yan stood still like a mountain. It's better for us that both of them get defeated. Jade and stone must all shatter. I just need the empty fantasy crystal. It's not that easy. Feng Rao shook her head and sighed. Even if Russell and Fan, you don't notice you. Once you join the battle, the third sky of King God Realm warriors will see you. You won't be able to escape. Pausing for a while, Feng Rao looked at him. But the main reason is that you can't put the empty fantasy crystal in the fantasy sky ring. This crystal is so obvious you can't bring it away discreetly. It's impossible. I advise you not to dream about it anymore. Then we can seize a war chariot, Shi Yan snorted. Whether it's the pirate or the 9-star Chamber of Commerce, they have war chariots that we can use. It won't be a problem to transport the empty fantasy crystal by war chariot. While they were talking, Shi Yan sent his soul consciousness to the center of the battle. His beam of soul consciousness moved to and fro, carefully rejecting space energy in it. His soul altar spun as he focused on sensing the movement of space. While the battle was taking place, flows of soul consciousness were everywhere. No one noticed his soul consciousness, as he had dismissed space energy in that beam. The empty fantasy crystal couldn't affect him anymore. As he had been cultivating space power Upanishad, he became more sensitive to space energy fluctuation. Soon, he found the location of the empty fantasy crystal, at a corner behind the big ship. Boom, boom, boom. Under the furious, destructive energy attack of the pirates, the 9-star Chamber of Commerce's massive battleship split and then fragmented. Hundreds of silver fragments started to scatter. A fragment of the ship with the energy fluctuation of the empty fantasy crystal shot towards the mineral star under the gloomy sky. It shot fast, like a silver meteor, towards the ground. Since the ship was almost 1,000 meters long, that fragment had the size of 10 war chariots. Life energy fluctuations were reported to be found inside the fragment. Obviously, there were some experts hiding there. Shi Yan's eyes glued to that fragment of the massive battleship. Light shone gloriously in his eyes. He paused for a while before saying to Feng Rao, "You have no business here. You can stay aside." Feng Rao was dumbstruck. "I don't care if you don't think that I'm honest. I want to tell you that you're really beautiful." Shi Yan grinned, then pulled Feng Rao, putting a kiss on her cheek. "See you later." An electric light boomed. His figure disappeared immediately. His life energy fluctuation vanished. Feng Rao was perplexed. Strange surprise flashed across her beautiful eyes as she touched her cheek. After a while, she stomped her foot angrily. "You want to dump me here? It won't be that easy." She knew what she had to do. Although she couldn't sense Shi Yan's aura, she knew the direction he took. Feng Rao soared up, flying in the direction Shi Yan's eyes had gazed at. Chapter 808, The Blood Soul Sea. Chapter 808, The Blood Soul Sea. While the battle was fierce, Shi Yan disappeared. He turned into a bunch of light, shooting towards the ship fragment which had the empty fantasy crystal. In the gloomy galaxy, stars twinkled and thick blood showered. Flames burned people. Shattered figures fell from the galaxy. Lives were lost. The battle between the bloody Chief Skull Pirates and the 9-star Chamber of Commerce had come to a critical moment. Russell and Fan Yi, the two first sky of original God Realm, had occupied the center of the arena. They were fighting each other. In this area of their battle, everything vanished. No one dared to stay in the affected area of their battle. They all stayed away as they were scared of the powerful energy attacks. Russell came well prepared. The thugs under his commands were all brutal and bloodthirsty. Most of the Fan family's warriors were hurt. They couldn't protect the materials on the ship anymore. Those pirates stayed in their war chariots. Whenever they successfully killed someone, they would gather the shining materials, stack them on their chariots, and continue to scream, laugh crazily, and kill more. Many warriors of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce were torn into pieces. Their god bodies were dismembered. Some were beheaded. The pirates hung their heads on the war chariots as their spoils. Although the Fan family was powerful, they had bad luck encountering Russell at this time. They were targeted and ambushed. Their resistance became weaker. Shi stormed fast. On his way, he extended his arm to pull the bodies that were falling into the star sea to him. He took this chance to seize the essence chi of the dead, which hadn't vanished yet. Within 10 breaths, he had gathered more than 10 bodies, half of whom were in true God realm and the other half in the first sky of King God realm. He even grabbed 1 or 2 second sky of King God realm warriors. The essence chi of the dead became a flood of energy, swarming into his body wildly. His acupuncture points swelled painfully. White mist fumed. At first glance, smoke diffused from his entire body, just like he was being burned. Swoosh, swoosh. Bunches of energy light darted a dozen times more furiously than sharp arrows. Those lights shot towards the abandoned mineral star, making holes that went so deep that they couldn't see the bottom. Corpses gathered at one spot, moving under Shi energy control while he hid under them. He was about to approach the ship fragment which kept the empty fantasy crystal. It was a silver metal block around 3 mu, where 10 warriors were fighting against each other. Warriors of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce wore silver uniforms with the symbol of 9 stars on the back. The Bloody Chief Skull pirates also had the Bloody Chief Skull crest on their sleeves. At first glance, they could identify which side the warriors were on. Shi appeared abruptly on that metal silver block. He immediately looked at the bottom of this ship fragment. Fine cracks appeared on this metal block. Disorderly space energy seeped out from these fine cracks. They seemed to be able to trigger the space slits. While fighting with each other, warriors of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce and the space pirates also tried to avoid coming close to those space cracks, as they were afraid that the chaotic energy inside the cracks would affect them, giving the others a critical chance to kill them. As Shi appeared, he drew the attention of both sides immediately. Both sides looked at him with dark, brutal looks. This man doesn't have the symbol of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce or the crest of the Bloody Chief Skull. He must be an outsider. Crack! A crisp sound echoed. Feng Rao's sexy body appeared behind Shi. Her brows knitted together as she shouted slightly, "Tough!" This group of people had 3 second sky of King God realm, 1 from the 9-star Chamber of Commerce and 2 from the pirate side. The others were at the first sky of King God realm. None of them had the lower realm than Shi. If he fought in this battle by himself, he wouldn't have been able to do anything. Might be the others would have opportunities to kill him. Since Feng Rao had left the land of God punishment for several hundred years, many pirates had forgotten her. Russell's troopers didn't recognize her either. They just glared at her before continuing their battle. Shi had spent half of his energy on this journey, while Feng Rao's life magnetic was a little weaker than usual. At this moment, she didn't have the intimidating aura of a 3rd sky of King God realm warrior. The warriors just ignored her. Since Shi had a 1st sky of King God realm cultivation base, the warriors just peered at him and then got back to their fight. None of them paid attention to the 2 newcomers. Dried bodies drifted around Shi. A large amount of essence chi from the dead streamed torrentially and invisibly into Shi body. Gradually, a brutal and bloodthirsty feeling multiplied from the bottom of his heart and expanded to his entire body. The negative energy seemed to materialize. Then it condensed, turning into immense clusters of white cloud. They gathered, and the wild, chaotic energy gushed out crazily. Feng Rao's face slightly changed. Her eyes shifted from the bloodthirsty aura to Shi bearings. Since she had an idea of what was going to happen, She didn't hasten to act rashly and backed off instead. Rumble, rumble. The two pirates at the second sky of King God Realm had joined hands to use their god domains to suppress the warrior at the same realm of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce. They grinned fiendishly, slashing at his head. As the warrior of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce realized that the most dangerous part of the battle was about to come, he didn't hesitate, urging all of his powers to resist. Right at this moment, Sure Yan's blood-red eyes became hot. His refined body slightly shrank. The white cloud clusters hovering around him turned and flew towards both sides. Soul burial ground. Deploying the god domain, bloodthirsty light sparkled from his eccentric, blood-red eyes. He seemed to merge with those white clouds instantly. Boom! The white clusters turned into a blood-red sea that covered the warriors. A vicious aura diffused from Sure Yan's body. Negative feelings, including despair, bloodthirsty, resentment, and hatred, multiplied exponentially. As Feng Rao wasn't very far away from Sure Yan, her soul altar got stagnant. Her beautiful eyes were puzzled, and she felt like her god soul was eroding. She discolored in fright. The coverage of the blood sea expanded gradually, but it didn't cover her. However, even though she was standing 10 meters away from it, she still felt her god soul get dizzy and affected. She couldn't control it. Feng Rao was terrified. She jumped back, moving 100 meters away from Sure Yan, looking at that place with fright. An eccentric situation happened all of a sudden. The blood sea of the god domain covered both sides. They now all looked congested. Bloodthirsty intentions sparkled in their eyes as they completely lost their minds and attacked each other rashly. It wasn't the battle between the pirates and the 9-star Chamber of Commerce's members anymore. They fought against each other disorderly in a chaotic manner, not caring whether they were truly fighting their enemies or not. The pirates seemed to have bloody resentment against each other, while the warriors of the 9-star Chamber of Commerce also attacked one another with clenched jaws. All who were covered in the blood sea of the god domain had lost their minds as if they had fallen under a slaughtering spell. Now they had only one thought in their mind: kill them all. Within several breaths, the 9-star Chamber of Commerce and the bloody Chief Skull pirates had already taken a big loss. Half of them were killed by their own teammates. Weak warriors were dismembered. Their soul altar was also shattered. Those fragmented soul altars were attracted by some unknown force, flashing before disappearing in Sure Yan's direction. It looked like the air had swallowed them all. Standing in the middle of the blood sea was Sure Yan with his garnet eyes and ferocious visage. The cold intention was hung on the stiff corners of his mouth. He instinctively pulled and twisted, condensing the bloody aura around him and turning it into the chaotic energy that could distort people's soul. The energy then stormed into the god body of those who had already lost their minds. Those who got hit by his bloody, murderous aura shouted and screamed crazily. It looked like their life potentials had been urged to the acme. Their god bodies cracked and bled. The energy was seething wildly in their bodies as their attacks became more powerful and effective. Sure, Yan seemed to enjoy all of these reactions. Standing in the blood sea, he slowly closed his eyes. As if it was as simple as taking a walk around the place, he had triggered the craziest instinct of those people, making them slaughter each other. Those thugs seemed to be in a bedevilment state. They acted like they didn't see the man standing in the middle of the blood sea. They just let him mess with the whole things. Gradually, warriors were killed until there were only 2 people fighting with each other. The 2 second sky of King God Realm pirates. The crazy, brutal, and resentful feelings of the warriors before they die flooded the blood sea, strengthening its ability to rise the bloodthirsty feeling from deep inside people's hearts. From 100 meters away, Feng Rao was petrified, looking at the blood sea. She felt her soul sinking. The desire to kill people surged in her heart like a mental disease. It made her want to tear all the restraint and join that battle to slaughter people. She discolored in fright, not daring to look at the blood sea any longer. After she could pull herself together, she turned and continued observing. Turning around the second time, she found no people alive in that blood sea. The last two warriors were dead, too. The pungent smell of blood stormed into his nostrils. Shi Yan, immersing in his blood sea, slowly opened his eyes. There was no beam of humanity in his eyes, only the basic nature of destruction that froze people's souls in extreme fright. At this moment, Shi Yan didn't look like a mortal creature, but more like a bloodthirsty death instead, as if the meaning of his existence was to destroy all creatures. Feng Rao felt chilled. Shivers ran down her spine. She suddenly recognized that it wasn't simply luck that got him the star map. The red blood melted under the heat and refinery of the dead Upanishad. Scarlet mist entered Shi Yan's acupuncture points, where it was immediately filtered and refined. The garnet eyes of his resumed their normal state. Shi Yan was dull. After a while, he took a deep breath as if he had just awakened from a terrible nightmare. He discolored in fright immediately. Even Shi Yan himself didn't know how it happened. Looking at the fragments of the bodies around him, his face was very stern, looking like he was seeing the bodies for the first time. The blood soul sea, the power developed from the god domain of the dead power Upanishad, could urge the bloodthirsty desire in people's hearts and make them kill restlessly. Only when the negative feelings were urged completely would the blood soul sea be created. It was like the dusty memories had been finally cleaned. A flow of memories appeared clearly in Shi Yan's head. In just a moment, he understood the thing called blood soul sea was the power developed from the soul burial ground god domain. It was the ultimate performance of this martial technique. As he had pulled more than 10 corpses with him previously, he had poured a lot of negative feelings into his body, which had stirred up the third sky of Rampage Realm. The terrifying negative moods burst out at the same time, fusing with the soul burial ground and creating the supernatural power called Blood Soul Sea. The Blood Soul Sea made those who were covered in the god domain to lose their minds completely, making them the slaves of slaughtering. Thoughts continually crossed his mind. Shi Yan held a stiff face, forcing himself to clear his mind. He didn't dare overthink and simply grabbed the empty fantasy crystal in the ship fragment. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.